Welcome back to Squawk Box. We are live from the CNBC CEO Council Summit in Washington, D.C. Here's where we caught up with Pfizer's CEO Albert Bourla on the sidelines of this event. Roughly 40% of Pfizer's research dollars are spent on oncology. Bourla says that finding a cure for cancer is his passion. We talked about the company's big strides, particularly its recent announcement about a lung cancer drug that has shown some promising results on slowing the progression of the disease.
In lung cancer, we had Lorbrena that demonstrated 81% reduction in the risk of progression or death. That's 5 times, right?
Yeah, because lung cancer, when it comes back, is deadly. And
lung cancer is the #1 cause of death among cancer patients. And usually at 7 years that we measure, there are 3% alive with this cancer with the best treatment available. Right now, there were 55% and the plateau, so the people continue living. So I think it is the closest we have seen to make it a chronic disease, to cure the cancer rather than worry. But also had 2 very impressive equally, one in colorectal cancer, but it is a cancer that is taking off right now, particularly in younger people. In colorectal cancer, we have 56% reduction, so double the chance of life. And the same it was with prostate cancer, 56% reduction of death, the possibility of death or progression.
Those are pretty unbelievable results. What's different about these medications than what we've been doing in the past for these diseases?
There are genius people work behind them. Each one of them has its own history of discoveries and its own history of success, failure, until we were able to find these particular molecules that do this miracle.
How does the molecule work?
Each one of them works differently. The one, for example, that we discussed about the lung cancer is an ALK inhibitor. There is a mutation that creates this type of lung cancers. And when you are able to inhibit it in a way that it is very binding, that you can prevent the cancer.
So for patients who are out there, how soon before they could get access to these medications?
They are already there. But keep in mind that that was the 7th year that we examined to see how the product does. Already was launched a few years back. And I have met people that they are since it was launched 10 years ago. So, and they are healthy and active and they live their lives.
Again, Bourla said that it's really his passion to try and cure cancer. On stage here yesterday, guys, we talked a little bit about it, about how, you know, he felt like a hero after what happened with COVID. And the stock certainly reflected that. It was traded all the way up to $60.
Like a hero.
Came back down pretty sharply afterwards after the vaccine sales, I think, topped out at $56 billion annually. They're now at about $6 billion annually for that COVID vaccine. He said he really had to spend some time kind of soul searching and figuring out what to do next. He said he always needs a mission, and every company always needs a mission. That's why when he turned and kind of pivoted to cancer, that's their mission these days. They want to be mission driven. They want to find a way to save the world, and figures that that's always how they have to do it.
Jury's still out.
Yeah, $25 a share is where the stock is right now. But he said it was a pretty difficult year to try and pivot. Not this year, but I think 2023, where when the cancer the COVID sales dropped so drastically.
There was who did we have on? Was it Lilly? What company that's doing great is going back into vaccines?
Vaccines?
And I think it's, and you know, vaccines, when you say vaccine now, there's different kinds of vaccines. There's vaccines to prevent some type of transmissible disease, and then there's vaccines that work for cancer, which like ramp up the
Moderna is working on
yeah,
those.
exactly.
Right.
So you
and
have
some
to
of those things too.
define what you're
I mean, he's
to
been pretty public. Bourla is a very interesting character in that he has worked with the Trump administration to do things. He was the very first company to sign on for the drug reduction prices under this new Trump administration, to the frustration of some of the others in the industry. But at the same time, he's been pretty vocal of where he has disagreed with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. They work together on some issues, on things like cancer, and he's been pretty vocal where he thinks that he's wrong on the science of vaccines.
Too, that no one wanted, right?
Well,
If you get
sold
COVID,
for a while.
Paxlovid.
Right, it sold for a while, but again, when COVID left, so did the sales for those.
It's like, I don't know. I had it a couple, maybe it was much less because...
Do you remember how eager you were to get the vaccine?
I thought I won the lottery, honestly,
Yeah.
when I think we all going to get it, and then you could go, and I have a little bit different views now. I'm glad, but I certainly not going to take.
At the time, though, the company was lauded for being able to bring a vaccine in 8 months.
I was wiping down things that I bought at the grocery store.
Me too, for a while when you first brought it in.
I was putting my mask in the microwave after I went out in case it had some.
These are better days.
Well, hopefully they don't come back.
Coming up, folks, the biggest policy questions right now in Washington. We're going to talk around the midterms, AI regulation, and so much more. We're going to do that right after the break, live here in Washington, D.C.
Coming up, Senator Bernie Sanders wants to create a sovereign wealth fund to own AI stocks. Details next. First, though, the AccuWeather forecast from Bernie Reno, meteorologist.
Well, it's a terrific Tuesday from the lakes toward the northeast. Your exclusive AccuWeather forecast: sunshine, 70s. Chicago, Detroit, New York City, Washington, D.C., spotty thunderstorms, Atlanta, Miami, even Dallas and Denver today. Boy, the heat's on in the desert Southwest. If you're doing any traveling, your exclusive AccuWeather travel forecast, I'm not expecting any major delays. AccuWeather for Business delivers proven superior accuracy with often earlier site-specific warnings that reduce false alarms and costly disruptions so your business stays best prepared. Visit business.accuweather.com.
Senator Bernie Sanders says that he will introduce a bill to give the American public a direct ownership stake in the largest AI companies through a sovereign wealth fund.
This legislation will give the public a direct ownership stake in the largest AI companies in America through a one-time 50% tax, not on profits, but on stock.
Then he said that the billions, if not trillions of dollars generated by the fund would provide direct payments to the American people. I don't know if it's as crazy as you might ordinarily think. If there are going to be massive job layoffs because of AI, this might be a way to go back at it. I don't know about how you fund the sovereign wealth fund or how much you end up putting in it, but if we as a country can invest in companies like Intel, why not have a stake in the upside for something that could be positive?
I interviewed Dean Ball yesterday.
Oh, yeah, on stage.
On stage, right here at this conference. Dean was an advisor to President Trump, wrote the AI task force plan effectively in terms of what that plan, action plan, was supposed to look like. And he made, I think, a very smart argument, which is, I don't think we're there yet in terms of UBI and knowing where this is going to go and whether it's going to take employment or whether it's not. I think we all have lots of different views. There's also, by the way, another view, which is that we, the taxpayers, already own, ostensibly, some major percent of these companies, insofar as if they are successful, they should hopefully be paying taxes. They should be creating jobs. I mean, there's a whole, plethora of things that can happen.
Yeah.
On the flip side, yes, maybe if they start taking the jobs. But then the question is,
I don't know about how Bernie Sanders just proposed to fund it. That sounded a little crazy to me. But the idea of having some skin in the game and some upside potential on it doesn't seem
Are you ready to go to
insane.
Bernie Sanders for any type of economic proposals in public policy?
never.
let's start
I would
with
never
that.
agree with him, but
Let's
this
start with-
doesn't sound
let's
like the
start with
idea of
that.
having an upside
Okay, I
in
know.
the AI
I
doesn't
know.
sound as crazy as I would anticipate.
I know.
out of it.
I should actually listen and give it a chance. I just tune out almost immediately. Anyway, join us now to discuss the key policy
You didn't hear
issues
what he said.
here in Washington. Bernie. Sarah Bianchi, Evercore Public Policy Chief Strategist. Sarah, I'm looking at all, and thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
It's nice to have you all in D.C.
I'm looking at all these possible things we can talk about, and I was going to decide which ones are most important. I don't see how you don't talk about Iran first, but we're not going to get anywhere. So, I mean, something's probably going to happen, right? We have these machinations every day. There'll probably be we're looking at a 60-day something with the straight reopening, hopefully. So, is there anything more to say?
I think that's right. I think the deal on the table is the deal on the table. It's not a perfect deal for the president by any means, which I think is why he keeps hesitating. But the Iranians have held tough, and I don't think he's got a choice. So it's going to be some version of that, some opening of the straits, some economic relief for Iran, and 60 days to, I think from Trump's perspective, hopefully he gets to say that, he gets a moratorium on nuclear. Maybe that's slightly better, but I think this is whatever day it comes, I think that's the deal we're looking at.
I mean, you're Evercore Public Policy Chief Strategist, so you do something very specific. I guess we should talk about whether this Republican-controlled Congress can get anything else done. How does that rank in terms of the most important topics right now?
I think that's pretty low. I don't think we have particularly have high expectations.
Nothing's going to happen, you mean?
I mean, maybe a few slight things
Let's switch to the midterms then. Does that matter?
I think that does matter, although I'll tell you, I think that we're going to pivot very quickly to the 2028 race
After the
when we're going to
midterms.
hear a lot of new ideas like the ones you all were talking about on Bernie Sanders and AI. I think the topics are going to switch
We got that going for us.
very, very quickly. I think the midterms,
if the Dems take the House and the Senate,
Yeah.
what does that mean though? What do the next 2 years portend?
And what are the chances of that? Because it's gone down with this.
I think the market, or some of the betting markets, got ahead of themselves on the Senate. On the Senate for the Democrats. I think you still have Michigan and a kind of bizarre primary, issues around Maine. Ohio's very tough. So there's just a lot of things that have to go right. In terms of what it means, I think, slightly more funding. I think it does put pressure on the Democratic Party to have a proactive agenda, which they haven't particularly had for the time. It can't just be anti-Trump. But in terms of what they agreed to, marginally more healthcare spending, marginally some other things like that. But I don't think it's going to be, most of what President Trump has done, he's done through executive power, and I expect he will run that through the tape. So
We have Kevin Warsh. First 100 days, market tests him. It hasn't tested him yet. Think it will?
The market's been pretty patient. The market's been pretty patient with Iran. I think the market is happy with the war getting through and getting done. It's as good a pick as it could have hoped for. So I'm not positive the market's going to be a
Is the
test.
market anticipating rate cuts?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of uncertainty now in terms of the war, right, and what that all means. But I think certainly would like to see a rate cut. I'm sure the president would like to see one. But again, I think the market, and by the way, the economy has been pretty resilient, through tariffs, immigration, oil shocks.
When we said we're not there yet for UBI, when you hear the Democrats talk about the economy and how bad it is with inflation, you'd think we're almost there already with UBI. Will that play into the midterms?
I don't think we're going to be.
Are they 30? How bad are people feeling right now? Do you really?
They do not feel good. They don't feel good, and
for
they
the
don't.
$4 gas.
Yeah, it's higher here. They don't feel great, and I think they are impatient with the president because they brought him back to fix this issue, and they don't think that he has laser focused on it, and they don't feel that much better.
He's definitely focused on Iran at this point. That's got to happen first.
Understood, but I think they brought him back to fix the economy. But I think it's going to be a challenge for any government, honestly. I don't think people feel like institutions are working for them. So watching him struggle through the messaging in some ways feels like watching President Biden struggle.
And it always depends on which party's in power. With the stock market, when one party's in power, the stock market doesn't represent the economy. When then the other party gets in something, it does represent the economy. The stock market's got to be saying more than just AI. I mean, there are solid results almost across the board. Isn't there the underpinnings of the economy?
Yeah,
as far
I think
as
the challenge that even, it's not just the market, traditional economic metrics are not translating into how Americans are feeling. They just feel things are going up and they're not getting ahead. And I think it's interesting because that proposal you all were talking about is from Bernie Sanders. But the head of AI who you have, or corporate affairs, Chris Lane, who you guys having today.
Speaking later today.
Praised him for it, said some of the same stuff. Steve Bannon talking about some of the same issues. These politics, when they get here, are going to be strange bedfellows.
Because you're talking about populism and you're talking about affordability issues, and it's hard to get at that when you are not seeing lower interest rates that feed into mortgage prices, whether you can buy a home, what it costs for your student loans, along all of those items.
I think that's right. I think we're going to see again, not for the midterms, but going into next year with these presidential primaries, some proposals. When was the last time you saw companies coming in talking about why we need to raise taxes on their products? I think these AI CEOs are nervous, so I think we're going to see really.
How much of it is sort of political theater insofar as, do you imagine some of these companies say to themselves, I can say these things, I can say, please come regulate me, knowing full well that the place we're in right now is so polarized that the ability for anything to happen is almost impossible?
I think that's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. It's easy to say, and they all say, we're for taxation on some of these products, but the devil's in the details, right? And so there is a lot of that. It is easy to say. They're trying to get things done in the states in the interim, but at some point it's going to change. Just look how quickly the issues around data centers changed. I mean, there's protests all over Virginia now for data centers. I lived there. We used to have.
That's what surprised me about Bernie. Bernie's got to decide: do we want to boo at college commencements, or do we want to have a sovereign fund?
They probably would like to do both, but
you're
right. We're going to get a lot of wild ideas on this issue over the coming years.
All right, thank you.
Okay, coming up right here on Squawk Box, the CEO of Voyager Technology is going to join us, talk about advances in the commercial space industry and the next mission to the moon. It is 7 a.m. on the East Coast. You're watching Squawk Box, and we are live from the CNBC CEO Council Summit in Washington, D.C. this morning. I'm Andrew Ross Sorkin along with Joe Kernan and Becky Quick. We've got a very big show for you over the next 2 hours, including the U.S. Chamber of Commerce CEO, Suzanne Clark, the CEOs of Abbott Labs, the head of the CFTC, and later Business Roundtable CEO Joshua Bolten, Senator Ted Cruz, investor Ted Leonsis, and U.S. Trade Rep Jameson Greer. So a lot to chew on this morning. Among today's top stories, the one making news right now, President Trump saying indirect talks with Tehran were continuing at a, quote, rapid pace in a Truth Social post this after Iranian state media reported talks had stopped. Now, the president also telling CNBC he didn't care if negotiations were over. And of course, we are watching the price of oil this morning and equities on the back of that. We'll get there in just a second. Meantime, AI giant Anthropic has filed confidentially for an IPO. That could put it on track to go public this fall. And of course, there has been a race to go public between it and OpenAI. OpenAI preparing, we understand, to submit its own IPO filing imminently. David Faber asking Sam Altman on the air about that just yesterday. And then Alphabet shares are lower. The company is selling about $80 billion in stock to fund investments in artificial intelligence. That includes $10 billion coming from Berkshire Hathaway through a private placement.
All right, let's look at the futures this morning. Not really very pleasant so far. We're in the red, but we hit a series of new highs. Let's get to Dom Chu with a look at this morning's pre-market movers. Hey, Dom.
All right, so Joe, Becky, Andrew, we're watching shares of Marvell Technologies right now soaring, not down, soaring to the tune of 23% pre-market after NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang said that the chip designer would be the next trillion-dollar company. Speaking at the Computex conference in Taipei alongside Marvell's CEO, Huang said Marvell's networking chips are essential to data center connectivity. Back in March, NVIDIA invested $2 billion in Marvell as part of a partnership focused on specialized AI chips. That stock is, by the way, up about 340% over the course of the past 12 months. Meanwhile, you got shares of Strategy, which are down by just about 3.33% now, after a filing revealed that the company sold $2.5 million in Bitcoin during the last few days of May. It's only the second time the company has actually sold Bitcoin. The first time was back in 2022. That sale reflects the company's pivot a little more from Michael Saylor's longstanding never sell policy, as the price of Bitcoin has dropped by about 30% over the past year. Bitcoin prices, by the way, just sitting just below $70,000 right now, $69,497 the last trade there. And then HPE shares are surging to the tune of just around maybe 24%, now 23%, after the company posted its biggest earnings beat going back to 2018. Server revenues, which is now a subdivision of its cloud and AI unit, was the big outperformer. It also bumped up its full-year earnings guidance by a full $1 per share and said it's tracking 2 years ahead of its own long-term financial plan. So Hewlett-Packard Enterprise shares up 22.5%. Now, CEO Antonio Neri will be on Squawk on the Street later on today in the 11 a.m. Eastern Time hour in a first on CNBC interview, so must watch there behind a big 23% move in those shares. Joe, I'll send things back over to you guys.
Okay, Dom. Thank you. We'll see you later.
You got it.
Meantime, an explosion of a Blue Origin rocket last week, highlighting challenges in the space race. And our next guest leads a company that operates in both the space and defense markets. Joining us right now is the chairman and CEO of Voyager Technologies. Dylan Taylor is here. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
I believe you may have an announcement to make as well.
We do.
So we need to talk about that. We also need to talk about this explosion and what it means to the space race. But why don't we go to you first?
Sure. So we're announcing this morning we're acquiring Astrobotic Technologies, which is a Pittsburgh-based space robotics company, very instrumental in the NASA Ignition initiatives, landing robotic missions back on the moon. So consideration for that, Andrew, is about $300 million, fully earned out, if you will, 80% stock, 20% cash. This is a beloved company in our industry. It was a spin out of Carnegie Mellon, and really is going to have a big influence on Lunar Base 2 and a lot of other initiatives.
And does this get integrated fully into the company? Does this operate independently? How does it work?
Well, certainly we're going to lean very heavily into the expertise that they have. They have 200 highly skilled engineers and scientists in Pittsburgh and also Mojave, California. So we'll be investing in those locations, but of course it'll be part of Voyager Technology as well.
Let's talk about the race to space, but let's put it in the context of this Blue Origin, because
You went up in a Blue Origin?
I did. Yeah,
You went to space.
I did. December of 21, I was on the Michael Strahan flight. Life changer. Seeing the Earth from space is something you can't unsee or unfill, and yeah, it was remarkable.
So to see that explosion last week, what are the true implications of that? Because at some level, you say these things seem to happen,
right?
And we've seen this happen. We've seen it happen at SpaceX and elsewhere.
Right.
On another level, given that there's no real competition at SpaceX at the moment, given the fact that it seems like they've been set back, I don't know how long you think they're going to be set back for now, what this sort of means for the whole industry.
Well, I think there are two components. So the rocket exploded, that's concerning. You need to figure out what caused it. But I think the bigger concern is the pad was destroyed, right? And pads are, think of these as highly bespoke infrastructure, and without a pad, you can't launch again, right? And Blue Origin had planned for a second pad that was sort of under review and under design, but you're looking at probably a year to get that pad back online, and I think that's the bigger
concern. You think it's a full year to get the pad back on?
Well, it's not next week, that's for sure. I think it's going to be months, if not at least a year.
Right. And then what about the end?
Can I just ask you, when you saw that explosion, I didn't think of it from the perspective of somebody who has taken one of these rockets and gone up into space. Did that make you think twice about the idea of space travel for yourself?
You know, it's interesting, Becky. No, because the thing is, well, that's just.
I forget that that we've had issues like this the whole way through the space exploration.
Yeah.
I feel like we're past that when you start seeing consumers go up, and then you see an explosion like this, and you remember how risky it is.
It's a fair point, but keep in mind the suborbital rocket I went up on, Becky, has crew escape functionality. So theoretically, if it were to blow up, you would eject.
Not if you see an explosion like that.
Well, it's designed to actually eject the capsule far enough away that you should be safe, but it's a fair point.
Yeah.
Space is hard.
In terms of the engine design, I think the separate question is, Blue Origin's been working on this engine design for quite some time.
Right.
And so when people say, okay, we need to iterate or pivot from, can you pivot from one design to another? Is it just incremental change when you see something like that has to happen in terms of how they therefore upgrade or change the design?
Again, it depends on the failure mode. If there's a fatal flaw with the engine, that would be a real problem because they would have to redesign it. I don't anticipate that's the case, Andrew. I think they'll find something that glitched that is easily, in quotes, repairable over time.
When you look at the broader space industry, and right now, obviously, everybody's very excited about the SpaceX IPO, and you look at the valuation that's being assigned to SpaceX, do you say to yourself, that makes a lot of sense to me? Do you say that seems completely crazy and all of the sort of things that are being discussed are 10, 20, 30 years down the road? What is your feeling?
Well, I would make 2 points. So I talked to Morgan Brennan, this was probably 7 years ago. And at that time, SpaceX was raising around $20 billion. And I think she asked me on camera, is that a fair valuation or not? And I said, well, look, if you look at all the opportunities SpaceX has in the future, you can anticipate that the valuation is only going to increase over time. So that was $20 billion. Now we're talking.
You were right.
Well, I ended up being directionally right, but what I would say, here's the way I think about it. Space is the 8th continent. Andrew, think of opening up. It's not an industry, it's a domain. So what would you ascribe a value to an entire continent of commerce? And that includes lunar, it includes deep space, it includes low Earth orbit. The space station project that we have, Starlab, that pencils to a $4 billion revenue, $1.5 billion of free cash flow in the 2030s per year. That's one infrastructure project. So if you look at orbital data centers, if you look at the moon, if you look at heavy lift rocketry, which SpaceX has pioneered, sky's not the limit in this case.
And when you think about, we talk about data centers in space, people talk about solar, mirrors on satellites that then are sending light down to solar panels on the planet.
Right.
I mean, what are the things that we're not thinking about in terms of what the opportunity set is?
Well, I'll give you a couple. So, for example, space-based power for sure, space-based communications for sure, but also think of things like nuclear fusion, which I know is a topic of interest. We need helium-3 for that. The Earth is literally and figuratively running out of helium-3. The Loon has a ton of it, so that could be of interest. Rare earth materials, those are in abundance in the lunar environment as well. So there's lots of different applications once we have the infrastructure in place that we can monetize. I do, by the way, orbital data centers, I know that's a big topic. I think it's going to work. The form factor matters, because as you may know, it's hard to dissipate heat counterintuitively in space. So if you're building a school bus size data center node, I think the radiator would have to be 100 meters long. But if it's a Starlink form factor and you're doing a mesh network like Elon is planning, I think that works.
Dylan, I want to thank you. It's a much longer conversation, but it's fascinating.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, when we come back, U.S. Chamber of Commerce CEO Suzanne Clark will join us on AI, jobs, economic growth, and the state of American business. And later this hour, the battle over regulating prediction markets with CFTC Chairman Michael Seelig. That's coming up at 7:30 a.m. Eastern Time, and Squawk Box will be right back. Welcome back, everybody. AI, affordability, jobs, economic growth, those are the issues that are facing businesses across the country and policymakers right here in Washington, D.C. The United States Chamber of Commerce CEO Suzanne Clark joins us right now to talk about the state of American business. And Suzanne, welcome. It's great to see you.
Thanks for having me.
So let's talk about how businesses are feeling right now. You represent all businesses, small, medium, large. What do you hear back?
You know, it's kind of two different tales. You know, on one hand, this administration has given business two great tailwinds between tax certainty and tax reform and a deregulatory push that I think has been underreported, right? The number of savings is around $1.2 trillion. The lack of complexity, the ability to build. So I think there's this tailwind from tax and dereg. At the same time, as you know, inflation is concerning, the cost of inputs, a real problem finding the right level of skilled workers. So we see this uncertainty and fear, and particularly with small business. At the end of Q4, our survey of small businesses said about 42% of them were planning to hire. By the end of Q1, that was 30%. So they're getting nervous.
Is the biggest reason a nervousness, or is it that they're actually feeling a pinch in terms of the inputs and in terms of inflation themselves?
I think it's the cost of inputs. We've had a lot of incoming phone calls this week, particularly about fuel, not just the cost at the pump, but then what it costs to ship things or what it costs to travel. And so far they're still spending, right? We're seeing both businesses and consumers spending. The question is, when will they turn to act on that fear?
It's interesting when you start seeing a situation where affordability is the key word that both parties are picking up on. It's tossed around all the time in Washington. You've got midterms coming up, and then not long behind that, they will turn their focus to what happens in 2028. That affordability question, I've read through some of the things that the Chamber puts out. It looks like you all feel like you kind of have to do Econ 101 when you're talking to regulators, when you're talking to Congress and some of these issues. Look, when supply is tight, prices go up. That's some of the things that you're trying to preach to Congress. Is you're worried that they're going to get involved and put some onerous legislation on that tries to fix some of those issues?
What I'm worried about is they won't do the things only they can do. So a good example would be permitting reform, right? It can't take 5 to 7 years to get a permit. Companies want to invest, they want to hire, they need certainty that their investment's going to pay off. So there are things that only Congress can do, right? We have a president who finally got this border secure. Could he also be the president that figures out more legal immigration? He's a builder. He was in hospitality. Can he figure out what we need? So the question is having a government that sets the conditions so business can invest and business can hire. So I'm more afraid that they won't do the things we need them to do.
It seems like a press to get an idea like immigration through Congress at this point. They haven't been able to do it for how many Congresses to this moment?
I know, and the deal has been sitting right there, right? It's so close. So maybe our best bet, at least before the midterms, is permitting reform. And I was on the Hill last week with a bunch of senators on both sides of the aisle who really understand this and want to get it done. So I'm cautiously optimistic.
Permitting reform is something that would probably make sense as a quick fix for a lot of industry leaders. It's not very sexy when you start talking about it in polling places, though.
But it's so good that you made this connection between the midterms and what politicians need to achieve and what the economy actually needs. Because the truth is, if we don't remove some of these supply constraints, we're going to be dealing with affordability issues for a long time. So we've got to free up more supply, and we got to make that sexy again.
What does the jobs market look like right now, and where does that fall in terms of what your members are concerned about being able to find labor?
We've got 6.8 million unfilled jobs, right? And some of that is this mismatch of the people we graduate versus the skills that we actually need. But what we hear the most is a need for particular types of skills.
Can I ask you to weigh in on the Bernie Sanders proposal as it relates to AI, because it connects back to the idea of jobs and whether we're going to have jobs, whether some of these companies are going to employ people? Would you be an advocate effectively for a sovereign wealth fund that takes a stake in these AI companies?
We are the OG free enterprise people. So anytime
I'm assuming the answer is no.
Is getting involved, government wants to get involved in a market, you can count us as a no. But I think, what we've got to think about here is, what is the AI aspiration for all? The risks, I think, and the challenges feel so tangible and they scare people, but we're not doing a good enough job of talking about the aspiration for everyone. And I was watching your show yesterday when Sam Altman was interviewed, and he said that, right? What is the story we create? And I'll give you one. This is the idea that small businesses are using AI. 60% take up, 82% of those people say they're hiring. So if that's true, then how do we get some good stories out there?
Were you also in the camp that, for example, the U.S. government shouldn't take stake in Intel then?
Look, at the end of the day, we've seen the government take stakes before in history in a time of crisis. There was congressional oversight, there was a deadline to get out, there were guardrails. And so if we're going to have government intervention in markets, we'd like to see those things. We'd like to see congressional oversight, we'd like to see a time they get out, we'd like to see guardrails. Again, OG free enterprise.
We'd already given them the money. Might as well get a stake.
Well, no, and that's it. But this is why I'm asking, I'm assuming, but maybe I'm wrong, that you would have preferred, on behalf of the business community, them not to necessarily take a stake, but to give the money. Meaning, originally when the CHIPS Act was put in place, it was done on a sort of voluntary basis without the idea that there was a stake or some kind of long-term government relationship, right? I mean, that was the distinction. So I'm curious, from your vantage point, how you see that, and therefore how you see that versus, for example, what Bernie Sanders is doing.
But I think, to Joe's point, the government is going to make these decisions. What you want to see, though, is at a time that they're going to get out. You want to see a time that there are guardrails. You're going to say, okay, we did this in this crisis, but here's the moment, here's the exit.
Sort of like the GM plan or the banking plan, TARP.
What worries me, right, is now there are how many states saying we should take a piece of AI companies so that we can create dividends for the population. If we're going to create entirely new ownership rules in the United States, you can count us out.
Suzanne, thank you very much for coming to set. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great to see you.
Coming up, we've got Abbott Labs in just a moment. Abbott Laboratories Chairman and CEO Robert Ford on his company's portfolio and some of his key takeaways from the recent ASCO conference. He joins us when Squawk Box returns. And joining us now, just back from the ASCO conference in Chicago, Robert Ford, Chairman and CEO of the Abbott Laboratories. It's good to have you on set with us.
Great to be here, Joe.
Let's talk about just the whole ecosystem right now and how Abbott fits in, some of the near-term challenges at Abbott. You've made some decisions to change the company to some extent. Stock hasn't performed maybe as well as some of the other members of your group. Where do you stand right now?
Well, I think what you've seen is a really unprecedented move of capital into gravitating towards these hyper-growth, AI ecosystem tech companies. And obviously the question there is, what's the return going to be? What's the adoption of AI going to look like? I don't think what's not a question, Joe, for us is the demand for healthcare is going to continue to accelerate. You've got 9 billion people on this planet that are living longer, being older, and we know for a fact that when that happens, you've got this acceleration of demand for healthcare. So what we've done with Abbott, we positioned the portfolio to look at areas where we can have the greatest patient impact and then obviously benefit from high growth segments. So our cardiovascular portfolio, our medtech portfolio, our wearables portfolio. We're a leader in branded generic pharmaceuticals in emerging markets. We've got a whole portfolio of diagnostics. We've now added cancer diagnostics into the portfolio. So you look at our growth rate, prospects of our growth rate, the pipeline that we're building, and then combination of the risk profile that we're offering our investors. And I don't think there's a question about whether that demand of healthcare is going to be there, and the valuations that are currently, I think anybody who's buying healthcare right now, buying Abbott Labs right now, is going to do pretty well.
You saw an opportunity in your last report. You bought some stock yourself, right?
Sure.
After it was the biggest drop in the stock in what, 10% on a given day. What was in the details of that report? Do you think that?
Well, one of the things we had challenges with our nutrition business. So back in 2022, we had this unprecedented input in our costs. So we had to balance between accessibility and mitigating some of those inputs. So we passed on some of the costs to the consumers, and in some parts of our nutrition portfolio, we saw some of the consumers trade down and move out of the category. So with that, then we took action in Q4 of last year, made pricing decisions to be able to re-engage the consumer with our categories. And what we're seeing now is volume growth occurring in our nutrition business. So that was really the driver of that, and we'll be through that, and we'll start to see growth reignite.
Are you seeing higher input costs now, just over the last several months, and does that worry you?
No, we haven't seen. I mean, there's always a little bit of noise, but Beck, we manage that. We've got great teams that manage that. But we had never seen what we saw in 2022 and 2023, especially on commodities. We had never seen that. We look back 20, 30 years and never seen that. So yeah.
We were talking during the commercial break about glucose monitoring.
Yeah.
How big a business is that ultimately going to be, and other kinds of things that you will be able to monitor that way? Because I use it, not right this second, but I have, I was always talking about my Oura Ring score and this, but I used to do the glucose score as well.
Sure. Well, it's a really exciting space. I mean, we look at, there's about 80 million people in the world that have diabetes. I mean, there's more than that, but we think there's about 80 million that can use continuous glucose monitors. Right now, you're at about 15 million, so there's a lot of room for penetration. Our sales are tending towards about $9 billion this year. I made a prediction back in 2021 that by 2028 we would be at about $10 billion. So we're ahead of that.
Lifestyle product, though?
Well, there's diabetes, and then there are people that don't have diabetes.
Right, so I don't have diabetes. I'm just fascinated, but I wonder when in an age when everybody's talking about GLP-1s and peptides and this, that, and the other thing.
Well, I think there's just a general trend of the consumer wanting to have more, more visibility to their health, more power of information in their health. So yeah, we are seeing. So we did launch a version of our diabetes product called Lingo, and that's really focused towards people that don't have diabetes but want to understand what's happening to their metabolism, what types of foods can I eat. Listen, your glucose is going to spike when you eat. The question is, what type of foods will make it spike higher, stay longer, and drop slower? And through Lingo, we teach our consumers how to understand that.
And what's been the uptake on that product?
It's been great. I mean, it's been growing. It's a small base, so the growth rates, for me. But we're thinking long term. I mean, you have. I talked about 80 million people with diabetes. I think if you look at it from a lifestyle perspective, you've got a lot more people that could be using it. So we're slowly building that. We're going to be adding new analytes. So we just got approval last week for the first sensor that will have a ketone and glucose in the same sensor. So we'll measure multiple analytes. We're developing a lactate sensor also, so that's going to go into trial at the end of the year. And lactate is a precursor for sepsis, so we think about that. And then it's also good for recovery in sports. So we're building a whole platform across our sensor portfolio. So it'll be a big driver of growth.
What was your takeaway from ASCO? Just the being there in terms of, cancer, I think you call it the challenge. It's all the challenge of every generation.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it validated what the board did over the last 2 years, which is look at what's the next high growth vertical for Abbott, and we said it's going to be cancer, and specifically cancer diagnostics. Big patient need, over 20 million people diagnosed every year. And then if you look at the cancer diagnostic market and look at all the different segments, do I have cancer? The screening market. What type of treatment should I use? The therapy selection market. And then once I've done that, am I in remission? The MRD segment. All those are the highest growth segments in diagnostics. So what I heard, Joe, was, as I was there, just excitement from looking at taking Exact Sciences' portfolio with all the expertise, technology, and know-how, and marrying that together with Abbott's global position around the world. We want to eradicate cancer. Therapies are a huge part of that. but they do better when you can diagnose early. So that's the role that Abbott's going to play in that fight, is on the diagnostic side and providing, providing patients with earlier detection so that we can eradicate.
And that'll pay off. I think part of maybe the stock, I mean, it has lagged. I don't want to keep harping on it, but the S&P is up, it's down, I don't know, 35%. The Exact Sciences acquisition will pay off, in your view. That's been part of the, I don't know, what, is the integration difficult, or what
No, the integration's going great. You got two great Midwestern companies coming together with a mission. I think when you're looking at the stock, you're looking at it across the entire healthcare. If you were to look at that, Joe, across the entire healthcare, a lot of healthcare is down significantly, which is why I was making those comments initially. Right. There's not a question about demand of healthcare and how that's going to look. So we're working on.
You got to have the right product mix, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. And we feel that we do have the right product mix, and we're well aligned to the global trends of healthcare.
Well, we'll be watching. Great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When we come back, Pfizer CEO Albert Bourla on the pharma giant's development of obesity drugs. There's a big meeting coming up this weekend with the American Diabetes Association, and he will give us a little bit of a preview of what you can anticipate there. Plus, much more on Anthropic's move to go public and what it could mean for the AI race. Squawk Box will be back in just a moment. Welcome back to Squawk Box. We are live from the CNBC CEO Council Summit in Washington, D.C. We caught up with Pfizer CEO Albert Bourla on the sidelines of the event here, and we talked to him about obesity drugs.
When it comes to obesity, it's a huge market. We are having a very big portfolio of drugs against obesity. Next week, it is the ADA conference where we will present a lot of data about our portfolio. The American Diabetes Association conference. We will present a lot of data, but pretty much what we hope to bring into the patients. It is a medicine that it is as good as the leading medicines in that field, but in terms of efficacy and with very good tolerability, but it is once a month rather than once a week.
For an injection?
It's an injection once a month instead of once a week. And we are working also on 2 additional parts of the portfolio and combination, again monthly, that will have dramatically even higher weight loss results. And the other it is to make a GLP-1 every 3 months, every quarter.
Once a quarter?
Once a quarter. That is a little bit earlier, but I have seen data just a couple of weeks ago. Very encouraging. I think we will get it.
What does it take? What has to happen to be able to do it once a quarter? The drug has to stick around in your body for a lot longer.
Correct. And you need to be able to have something that is called very prolonged half-life, which is something very well known in, since decades in pharmacology, but it's very difficult to be able to accomplish it with certain molecules. That's the magic of the molecules we are using.
The idea of injectables, obviously that's the market at this point, but there is a movement towards the development of a pill. Will there still be a market for injectables once that pill is created?
Yes, I think our calculations and the calculations of all investors is that the injectables will maintain the lion's share, but the orals will take a significant also share for those that they are afraid of the needle. And I think that there will be a percentage of them. We are having 2 orals that are following in our pipeline. So we want to play in the whole gamut of obesity needs. And we are really looking forward to launch it. We will launch in 2 years approximately.
We showed you that comment from him earlier about how he's really going after cancer. That is Bourla's big push. That's the place where they are spending 40% of their R&D. Obesity obviously has been the part that the market has been enthralled with when it comes to what's coming out of Eli Lilly, Novo Nordisk, and other places. Pfizer is chasing that with this obesity drug pipeline, and again, we'll learn more about that at the ADA this weekend, but you can see what's happened to the stock. It's down about more than 30% over the last 5 years. That came because of the drop in sales of COVID vaccines, which Pfizer was a leader in. It brought that its COVID vaccine to market in a matter of 8 months, which was a phenomenally fast turnaround time. Stock soared to $60 as the COVID vaccine sales ramped all the way up to $56 billion. Right now, those COVID vaccine sales are only $6 billion, so it is working pretty hard to find other streams to put back the revenue from these alternate things like obesity.
Okay, coming up, the battle over regulating the prediction markets. We're going to talk about it. CFTC Chairman Michael Selig is in the middle of it all as the Trump administration faces off with several states. The chairman joins us when we return right here in Washington, D.C. Squawk Box is live. We're coming right back. Welcome back to Squawk Box. Our next guest is going to weigh in on crypto regulation, prediction markets, and so much more. I want to bring in the CFTC chairman, Michael Seelig. Good morning to you. It's nice to see you. We're all trying to figure out a bunch of things are happening here. We've got the prediction markets, which I think are completely roiling or raising all sorts of questions about sports betting, about how they're used, all of those issues. There's the crypto piece, what's happening with Gemini, for example, just everything that you're doing. I want to start with sort of a broader sort of question, which is, there was a big piece in the New York Times just about a week ago that talked about the politics of the agency and who was in the agency, who was forced out of the agency, and sort of how you think that has or hasn't changed the fundamental sort of philosophy of what the agency does.
Well, a lot of what was recounted in that New York Times article was before my tenure. Of course, I've only been in the seat for about over 100 days now, and a lot of this was the previous leadership. But I will say that a lot of what happened under the Biden administration was this regulation by enforcement, was this politicization of the agency, and we're trying to get back to a baseline. We're trying to make sure that the agency does its job of regulating the markets and nothing else, nothing political. We're done with the lawfare. We're done with pursuing certain industries or certain types of politically involved people. And so, yes, there were some people at the agency that are no longer with the agency, but we're moving forward under my leadership, and that's what I'm here to do.
And is the view, though, that they were too political, those people? I mean, because this goes back to which side has the agency now become politicized? If you thought it was politicized before, has it now been politicized in some other way?
What we're focused on at the agency is the future. We're focused on making sure that we have dedicated career civil servants, and we do have hundreds of dedicated career civil servants that are not political. They're focused on doing their job. There are certain people like me that are there for political reasons. I'm a political appointee, but those that aren't really should not be engaging in lawfare, should not be targeting people for political reasons, and we're getting back to baseline, making sure that's not the case.
Part of the piece, though, talked about sort of this revolving door connection between industry and the agency itself. And for example, the prediction markets obviously have now opened up in a remarkable way, in a way that I think we didn't even see 2 or 3 years ago. I'm curious sort of what kind of influence you think that has had, but more importantly, I don't know if you saw, Gary Gensler was in Barron's recently and was talking about how when the original rules came about for prediction markets, that there was never a conversation, ever a conversation about sports betting being part of prediction markets. And had sports betting, for example, been part of prediction markets, been part of that conversation, that senators, especially from the states where they had laws already in place against sports betting, would have never gone for it. What do you make of that?
Gary Gensler, also the man who said every crypto asset is a security, and then that's very obvious. I think he has a little bit of trouble reading statutes, but I will say that the statute's very clear. The CFTC regulates all derivative contracts to the extent they are a commodity derivative, to the extent they involve a security, that goes to the SEC. And the statute's also very clear that event contracts, whether the event's on sports, politics, or anything else, is within our remit. We have express authority in the statute to prohibit the trading in certain event contracts involving sports, involving political things like war, terrorism, and assassination. And so that's all in the statute. I'm not reading outside the statute. I'm reading in the black letter.
Do you then use it to prevent those sports predictions from being made?
We do have discretion to set rules for that.
But are you going to?
We're considering rules in the space. I don't want to get ahead of that. We've put out an advance notice proposed rulemaking, received over, I think, 1,500 comments on that issue, and we'll consider various rules. We have one with OIRA right now.
I would just, separating yourself from being the commissioner at this point, how do you feel about that? Is a sports prediction, can you make it a sports prediction if you're betting, let's say, what happens to the outside, to even what happens to the game score? Does that sound to you like gambling, or does that sound like an actual contract?
It all depends on how the product's structured. In the casinos and the sports books, you cannot offer a market in sports derivatives. You cannot offer a market in political derivatives. Those products are regulated exclusively by the CFTC, and they're different than going to a bookie and placing cash with a bookie.
Here's the question that I'd ask you, which is, I've read the statute, you've read the statute. I think we could agree that the statute seems to, on its face,
just by dint of the text, allow for a market to be made in the context of what you just described around sports. I actually think that's not even up for grabs. I think the bigger question is whether you believe the intent of that law, when it was signed by Congress, was in fact to allow for what has turned into a market for something that looks very much like gambling.
I do believe that the intent of Congress was for the CFTC to exclusively regulate these products and to have discretion over certain areas, sports, gaming, all of that. We have authority to prohibit potentially if we choose to use that authority. But I do believe that Congress was very clear that the CFTC is the exclusive regulator.
Different question, and it goes to the question about insider trading, manipulation, all sorts of things. We just talked about this fascinating case, Andrew Left, who's a short seller. I don't know if you saw yesterday, was convicted by a jury of effectively manipulating stocks because he would go on social media, he would talk something up, and then hours later, the argument was that he sold that and that was a form of manipulation. Does that constitute a form of manipulation if I go on Twitter and tell people that I think the Knicks are going to win, and then I bet against the Knicks? So I'm gonna bet on the Spurs, but I'm gonna tell everybody.
You're trying to drive the derivatives contract.
Right, but I'm gonna bet on the Spurs, but I'm gonna tell everybody that I think the Knicks are gonna win, and you too should go bet on the Knicks. What is the what? No, but this is a fundamental question about how this whole system works.
It could. So, in the context of a sports derivative, we'd look at it the same way as an oil derivative or any other type of commodity derivative. If somebody is engaging in behavior to drive up the price artificially, of course we're going to consider a manipulation action.
But how does that work in the context of sports? It's just a total. It's a different. Do you see what I'm saying? That's why I think all this raises all sorts of new questions, and whether either Congress or somebody else, maybe you think the CFTC is supposed to be the one that ultimately determines what the guardrails are on all this.
It's really not so different, right? These are sports teams and organizations and players. If you're manipulating the outcome related to a sports team, a player, etc., it's no different than manipulating the outcome of what the price of a stock's going to be or how many cars will Tesla produce.
If you go out and say you're going to bet on the Knicks, I'm betting on the Spurs.
But no, I don't disagree if a player throws a game or a manager or somebody does something that may be sort of the equivalent of management. That I agree with is different. I'm saying, let's say there's, I don't know, somebody who you think has a large following online and a reputation, and therefore tells people this is what I think is going to happen, and whether that has any impact on these things. Do you think that that would be considered some kind of manipulation, and how would you treat that?
We're going to consider it. As I've said since the outset of my tenure, we are going to be tough on manipulation, fraud, insider trading, and abuse. We've brought a handful of actions already. We have more in the pipeline. We're sending out subpoenas. We are not going to tolerate any sort of manipulation in these markets.
I mean, it's out there already. Do you have any idea how we're going to eventually, what the resolutions are? I feel like we're almost like this. We're almost blindfolded as we're going forward, trying to figure out what to do with these. It's like the wild, wild west right now. Do you have a structure in your mind that we're going to eventually arrive at? I don't envy you.
We do. These products are trading on regulated exchanges that are registered with us. They administer the same types of controls and requirements that we have with other types of derivatives exchanges, but there are some nuances to these markets, and that's why we've put out a proposed rule that's now with OIRA. We've also accepted a number of comments, as I mentioned, in a request for comments, and we'll continue to iterate and put rules in place, but we're going to bring enforcement actions against those that break the rules.
Chairman, that strikes me as maybe the biggest issue if you're trying to enforce these things. There's a limited number of people who are playing in derivatives markets when it comes to commodities or any of the traditional ways of kind of placing these bets. What this prediction markets have done has opened the floodgates to so many more people being involved in these things. Do you need a ton more resources to be able to monitor all of this and bring actions on these levels? It just seems like the volume that you must be dealing with at this point, I can't even imagine how it's grown. Do you have any numbers on that volume, and do you need more resources for this?
We are seeing an increased retail participation in our markets, and this started before the prediction markets. We saw it with things like S&P mini contracts and contracts really designed for retail. We've seen it now with interest in crypto and now prediction markets. And so, of course, we're using our resources efficiently, and we will continue to do so. We're using tools like AI to make sure that we're able to leverage staff more effectively. But we also have a number of job postings on USA Jobs. We're recruiting, we're bringing on new staff, and we'll continue to do so.
Can I ask you a question in the context of enforcement? So on one side, you're saying you're going to enforce things. On the other side, in the crypto space right now, you're saying that the Winklevoss twins from Gemini were victims, effectively, of the CFTC when the CFTC found and then accused them of misleading or lying to the agency. So how do you think about enforcement in those contexts?
The Biden administration weaponized the federal agencies against the crypto industry and many other industries. They politically targeted people like the Winklevoss twins, and that's not acceptable. We're righting those wrongs. We're going to start fresh. The agency should not be used to engage in lawfare, and we're going to make sure that's
Do you think the Winklevoss twins misled the agency?
Look, I'm not going to get into the facts because this is an active investigation or in litigation rather, but what is important here is that to the extent the agency was used to politically target folks, we're reversing that and we're starting fresh. That's not going to happen again. It can't happen again under my administration or a future administration.
This is all fascinating, and we so are thrilled to have you here. Appreciate it very, very much. Thank you. It's a fascinating conversation, Chairman. We should also make a quick and important disclosure. CNBC and Kalshi have a commercial relationship that includes customer acquisition and a minority investment. Thank you so very, very much.
Coming up, the AI race is turned into the race to IPO. Anthropic filing confidential paperwork, getting ahead of OpenAI. We're going to talk to AI investor and entrepreneur Michael Furtick about how this could change the game. Squawk Box returns in just a moment.
Welcome back to Squawk Box. So we're live at the CNBC CEO Summit in Washington, D.C. AI, of course, dominating the conversation here. Yesterday, we spoke with former White House policy advisor for AI and emerging technology, Dean Ball. Among the topics that we talked about, the use or non-use of AI inside the White House.
No, no Claude. No Claude allowed in the White House, in fact.
Really?
No.
AI allowed in the White House?
No AI allowed in the White House. Yeah, no, Claude's a bad example with this White House, but no AI at all. No LLMs.
Because?
Because of something called the Presidential Records Act, which is a post-Watergate law that has to do with document retention. And basically the White House lawyers think that you would have to retain all of a person's chat transcripts with AI if you were to use it, and for purposes of the Presidential Records Act, and they don't want to do that.
Anthropic, meantime, officially entered the AI IPO race, even if it didn't enter the White House with its confidential S-1 filing. And joining us right now is AI investor and entrepreneur Michael Furtick, founder of Vertic Capital. Good morning to you. Big investor in Cursor, of course. We got Anthropic. We probably have OpenAI filing confidentially very soon, based on some of the conversations that David Faber was just having with Sam Altman yesterday on our air. Michael, how much do you think the race to go first matters?
Yeah, this is the starting gun on the AI Cambrian explosion value creation moment, and I do think that going first probably weighed very heavily on the minds of the people strategizing the timing of the IPO. Anthropic and OpenAI seem to be in a kind of personal grudge match between the two CEOs, but also in a grudge match and a battle royale for the audiences that they're trying to collect, the B2B enterprise audiences that they're trying to collect. OpenAI is even slimming down its offering to focus more on software coding to compete with Anthropic, which has always been focused on software coding. So I think they're trying to collect the audience. They're trying to probably collect also the capital market attention. They're trying to grab the momentum. So I imagine that is very important. The net effect on our industry as investors in tech is going to be colossal, right? I think there are some university endowments, in the case of SpaceX, there's some university endowments that have 20% of the entire endowment value. That includes public markets, private markets, real estate, energy, and so forth, tied up just in SpaceX. So this is not quite as colossal in the case of Anthropic in terms of consequence, but there's so much illiquidity that's been locked up in these three companies for so long that I think finally you're going to see now a watershed moment. And you're also going to see, right, a company, Anthropic, growing from 10 billion-ish to 50 billion-ish of run rate in 1 year. Think about that. Think about how often that's happened. Kind of Nevuary, right? So you're looking at another year from now, could be, what, 5x from here, another year from there, then 5x from there. What does that imply? You're talking about NVIDIA types of possibilities. I think you're going to see a kind of affirmation of everything that we thought could be true about how quickly AI is taking the world by storm, turning out to be true.
So, Michael, just to put a fine point on it, though, you are not therefore in the camp that really has emerged in the last 2 weeks from some corporate leaders who say, look, token maxing, we're out. We can't do this. We can't justify the amount of money that we're spending right now on AI, and therefore we're going to be limiting down to some degree what that capital spend looks like.
I think it's a very healthy reaction by corporate America. I think people are figuring out what tokens are going to be well spent doing and what they're not going to be well spent doing. I also don't believe that companies like Anthropic or OpenAI, the two kind of giants of the first generation of generative AI, are the end-all be-all, alpha and omega of this field. You're going to see foundational models built on new ideas. Right now, the foundational models basically that OpenAI and Anthropic run, basically that generation, are based on something called neural networks. That's not the only theory of the case about how to build a foundational model. There's a very exciting new raft of companies building on what's called bottleneck theory, for example, which promises, at least on paper, 100x or 1,000x cost improvement over the neural network generation of foundational models. So imagine if you could have that kind of revenue, the Anthropic style revenue, but let's say 400x cost improvement for customers, as well as margin improvement for the providers. I don't think this is the end of the story. I again think this is really the starting gun, and I believe that corporate America should be prudent and should be thinking about where they do want to spend their dollars, where they don't want to spend their dollars. I think that the race for cost on software coding is very much on. We're seeing published reports that Anthropic may be going public, and well, I'm interpolating that, but Anthropic's software task cost is much higher than their competitors. So maybe that's a reason for their IPO timing as well. We're just at the beginning. I think we're at 1%, the first inning, the first batter.
Hey, Michael, well, we're going to run out of time, but weigh in on this big issue, which is there's a whole group of folks who bought into these companies on the secondary market through special purpose vehicles and all sorts of things. Some of those shares became available because they tried to create windows for employees to sell those shares. Now, some of those shares were sold on an approved basis, meaning that the company has them on the cap table, effectively on record. There are others, apparently, that have been sold sort of in a gray market, if you will. And Anthropic specifically is saying, look, if you bought shares on a secondary market without getting approval from us first, we are voiding those shares. Do you believe they officially are voiding those shares? Do you think that OpenAI is going to do the same? And does that change the whole dynamic around this space?
I've read exactly the same reports you've read. Obviously, you're a professional journalist. I have to do it for financial reasons myself. It is a terrifying prospect for a company like Anthropic to say that they will not honor the exchanges so long as the exchanges have been executed within the rights of the shareholders. If the shareholders have been doing it outside of the four walls of their contractual rights, then we understand that. And there is a little bit of cowboy behavior in this field because there's so much value being created in these companies that a lot of people want in on them. Even some of my wonderful VC brethren, sistren, are claiming that they were investors in companies like Anthropic and OpenAI, but they were not. They missed the boat, so they had to buy on the secondary market. There are also some interesting workarounds we've seen. People buying basically futures contracts or promissory contracts of secondary share volumes for these names and these kinds of names, saying basically that you don't transfer the name of the shareholder, you just transfer the future promise of future gain from a certain share level. But it is very terrifying if in fact Anthropic or other companies do have contractual obligations to acknowledge ownership, but are then threatening to walk back, deny, or reject that transfer. I really hope it's not true. I really hope that the clarity is there, because it could be a whole raft of litigation, mess, confusion for people who have put money to work across an industry, believing that they were buying shares that were lawfully available to them. So I hope it's not true.
Michael, I want to thank you for joining us this morning. It's fascinating, and I'm sure we'll talk a lot more about it between now and IPO day for both of these big companies. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
It is a little after 8 a.m. on the East Coast, and you're watching Squawk Box. We are live from the CNBC CEO Council Summit in Washington, D.C. this morning. I'm Becky Quick, along with Joe Kernan and Andrew Ross Sorkin. Among today's top stories, shares of Google parent Alphabet are lower. The company is selling $80 billion in stock to fund investments in artificial intelligence. That includes $10 billion from Berkshire Hathaway through a private placement. You can check out Alphabet shares. They're down by about 2.75% this morning. Shares of Hewlett-Packard Enterprise are soaring, earnings and revenue beating estimates, and the company raising its full-year guidance. The CEO, Antonio Neri, will be on Squawk on the Street. That's coming up today in the 11 a.m. hour, first on CNBC. And a federal jury has convicted prominent short seller Andrew Left of securities fraud. Prosecutors accused him of using his reputation and media appearances to manipulate shares in a way that would reward his trades. Left said, in his words, the jury got it wrong. He also said he plans to appeal. Sentencing is set for August 31st.
I just wanted to let you know, I got an email from Andrew Left overnight, right after he was convicted, and I wanted to read it to you because it made me speechless. To get an email like this right after you get convicted. He wrote effectively to me the following. He said, I'm a bit speechless. He said, what does this do for the future of free speech is chilling. Can individual investors not talk SpaceX? Wow, still shocked. He then went on in a separate email to say, it's chilling that the government can regulate a private citizen's trading and speech, even if no false statements made or manipulative trading. The crime was the intent to
to profit, he said.
You know, the idea is, what's the definition of market manipulation here? I mean, we had this conversation earlier.
Yep.
How soon after you go out and you say something is terrible can you then get rid of your shorts on it? Or how soon after you say something is wonderful
it's fabulous,
can you
go
then
sell?
and sell it on the
and
same?
Clearly I mean, look, there was evidence, there were things he was saying, and then relatively quickly there were things that he was then either selling or buying as a result on the other end.
Yeah.
This was illegal in ancient Greece, too. I mean, this is pump and dump. This is the oldest thing, right? And what we're talking about here is just a classic pump and dump, is what he's being accused of. And I'm not convinced, to be honest,
that it was.
That there's merit.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. We will continue to talk about it. In the meantime, though, AI is creating both risks for American business and opportunities for growth and competitiveness. Joining us right now to talk about AI, CEO sentiment, and more is Joshua Bolton. He is the Business Roundtable CEO. And Josh, thank you for being with us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Before we get into AI, why don't we just talk about how your CEOs are feeling right now? Because we did speak with Suzanne Clark from the Chamber of Commerce a little bit ago. The Chamber of Commerce represents all businesses in the United States, the large, the medium, the small. And she said overall, she's seeing a decline in sentiment from her CEOs, that while north of 40% of them were talking about hiring late last year, that number dropped in the last time that they checked things out, 30%, a little bit north of that. I just wonder how your CEOs are feeling, because you represent the largest companies in the United States.
Yeah, we do, Becky, represent 245 CEOs of America's biggest companies. So our story is a little different. But it's also uneven. The hiring plans for our CEOs have been muted for more than a year. Those who are directly involved in the AI boom, they're the most optimistic, they're investing the most. And most others are navigating pretty well. The turbulence in the economy, the unevenness, comes more among their customers and suppliers, and they're worried about them.
And how would you just judge sentiment, let's say, if you were to give it a grade now versus where we were a year ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago?
Well, remember a year ago, we were just coming out of Liberation Day. Sentiment was very nervous at that time and downbeat. So it is better than a year ago. It's definitely better than the midst of high inflation post-pandemic. It's better than the pandemic. So compared to what? It's not bad, but they know they're navigating a pretty turbulent environment, both geopolitically, economically, with tariffs, and most of them are remaining pretty optimistic overall, but they know they're navigating difficult waters.
Justin, we have Jameson Greer coming on. He wrote an op-ed the other day about tariffs and about what he sees as the benefits of tariffs. He also makes a point that the chattering class talking about tariffs negatively, it was like Christianity. They're talking about it without ever having lived it or done it. And he makes the case that pre-World War II, it was done all the time to balance world trade. How much of the current malaise that we're feeling with consumers is tariff related? Because we almost got through that. We were waiting for Godot, and we looked into the abyss, and it never really happened. We turned the lights on, and it was de minimis, any type of inflation you're talking about, or disruption, and maybe there were some positives until the war. How much of these problems now with inflation are tariff related? Are we back to blaming tariffs, or is it based on the strait being closed? Because you're an old style Republican. Yeah, if you tax something, you get less of it, and tariffs are taxes, and they affect consumers. Have you changed that view at all?
I take old style as a compliment, Joe. Yeah, no, we haven't changed that view about whether tariffs overall are a good thing.
You two may pass. You should ask Jameson.
Well,
you would have quite an argument with him.
No, we at the roundtable, we've got a lot of respect for Jameson Greer. He's been a really good interlocutor. We've disagreed on the benefit and value of tariffs overall. Our view is that tariffs do have a place. They've been used throughout our history, sometimes productively, for protecting industries associated with our national security, industries associated with our economic security. But we don't agree that tariffs overall have been good for the economy. They are a tax, and they've been especially difficult for the manufacturers among our members. Because remember, of U.S. imports, half of them are inputs into other stuff we make. And if you're raising the costs of people trying to make stuff here in the United States, you're making them uncompetitive.
We're going to win no matter what in this term. We're going to win. Could we be winning even more if we weren't being taken advantage of? I think that's what Trump's issue is.
Sure, absolutely. The tariffs should be used to address unfair practices in other countries.
Which are widespread.
Very widespread, and we've been pushing Greer and the rest of the administration to focus on the unfair trade practices. But just using tariffs to raise revenue or to try to correct a trade deficit, that doesn't make sense for our economy. It doesn't make sense for our members.
What's better than taxes? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Corporate taxes versus tariffs.
No on both.
What's the roundtable's position on the war in Iran? Worth it? Not worth it?
Oh, no position on the war in Iran. Look, all of our members agree the economy is super important. Nothing's more important than our national security. And so our members are...
But how does the roundtable measure the issue of our national security versus the price of gas, the strait being open, trade, all of the issues?
We don't.
You don't.
We don't. Look, you can't have the CEOs of America deciding nuclear Iran versus our economy. For the first and most important responsibility of government, and it's a government responsibility, not a business responsibility, is take care of the national security. Having said that, let's not do stuff that's going to undermine our economy, which in the long term will undermine our national security.
Do you want to weigh in on Bernie Sanders' proposal yesterday as it relates to AI and taking effectively stakes in these businesses, given what he thinks are going to be larger concerns about employment down the line?
He thinks a sovereign wealth fund for the United States to do it. I'm not clear on how he would fund that sovereign wealth fund. He said something like a 50% tax, which maybe
tariffs, Joe.
No, I said earlier, what's that expression? You had me at hello. When you start with Bernie, no. I think the business round here probably be
probably similar, but yeah, no on a sovereign wealth fund. There are times and places where government needs to intervene in the economy, but to make the government a player in our economy just invites distortions and misallocation of resources.
We asked Suzanne Clark about this. Where do you stand, for example, on the investment stake in an Intel, for example?
I don't know about this. I don't want to comment on the specifics of the Intel arrangement, but that shouldn't be the norm. It's that the government is not here to act as a market player itself.
Old style.
Old style, and I embrace it.
I know
it's what's brought us to this moment of prosperity.
I'm with you.
Josh, you do have areas you would like to see the government intervene. The Business Roundtable has asked the government to intervene when it comes to energy to make sure that there aren't disruptions in the energy grid for shutting down AI growth.
Yeah. And there are places where only government can do stuff. One of them is what you were talking about earlier, which is AI cybersecurity. We need government to be engaged to help organize the business community so that we're as protected as we possibly can be from these things. So government's got a big role. It's to set the ground rules, create the conditions for our members to be successful businesses. But government's role is not to be a market participant itself.
Jeff, when in Rome, Trump's president, so when in Rome, and I see it. I see it happen a lot. People rethink a lot of positions because it could have been Kamala and Tim. So let's just remember that.
I'll let you have the last word on our politics there.
Josh, thank you very much for joining us. Josh Bolton.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Coming up, a wide-ranging conversation with Senate Commerce Committee Chair Ted Cruz of Texas. He now has a game plan to reform college sports. And later this hour, U.S. Trade Rep Jamison Greer will join us. That's at 8:45 a.m. Eastern Time. Spark Box will return in just a moment.
Okay, our next guest has introduced bipartisan legislation to reform college sports. Joining us right now is Senator Ted Cruz of Texas. He chairs the Commerce Committee. And Senator, thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Becky, thanks for having me, and welcome to the swamp.
Thank you. We're enjoying it.
Thank you.
Beautiful weather in the swamp.
It actually is gorgeous weather.
It is.
It's not too hot.
We sat outside for dinner last night. It was very nice. Let's talk a little bit about this bill, because I think sports fans everywhere are clamoring for something to be done.
Yeah.
The changes with NIL and what that has done to college sports has been disorienting at the very least. What does this bill do?
Well, look, I think there is an absolute crisis in college sports. We've got right now the transfer portal is out of control. You've got athletes that are transferring 3, 4, 5 times. You've got a cost spiral that is bankrupting athletic programs. Almost every athletic program in the country is losing millions, some cases tens of millions of dollars. What that is producing is every week a different school is canceling a different program. You see women's sports canceled, you see track and field canceled, Olympic sports canceled, tennis canceled. And I think it's completely unsustainable. And so what this bill, it's a bipartisan bill. I negotiated it with Maria Cantwell, who is the senior Democrat on the Commerce Committee. I'm the chairman of the Commerce Committee. And we spent literally thousands of hours negotiating this bill. This bill tries to bring order to the chaos. It tries to save and preserve college sports by addressing it from 2 directions. Number one, by putting tools in place to help slow down the constant spiraling cost up.
Basically, a player cap, essentially.
Well, it enables the schools to agree on a cap, just like in pro sports. I mean, you look at pro sports, the NBA doesn't have just constant bidding. They have a salary cap, and then you trade back and forth, and that means the teams don't all go broke.
Or that you don't have all the talent in a few schools that happen to have a lot of funding.
Right. No, that's exactly right. And if it were simply money, by the way, the San Antonio Spurs wouldn't be in the NBA Finals right now. You know, you'd have LA and New York in every game. And that's New York's there, but part of the fun of it is having real competition. You look at schools right now. So college football dominates college athletics and dominates the revenue. If we don't act, I think we're on a path where within 5 years there will be 30 to 50 colleges that have college sports, and it'll basically be a mini NFL, and just about everyone else goes away. And that would be tragic, because look, there are lots of reasons why sports matters. Sports brings us together at a time where we fight over everything else. We can all cheer together for sports, but more importantly, sports is this incredible avenue for young men and women to get a college education. There are over 500,000 college athletes competing in America right now, and if we don't act, hundreds of thousands of those slots are going away.
And by the way, student has been the idea of a student athlete. Student has been brought down to such a level that it's hard to watch. I'm with you on this. I think you're absolutely right on what's happening in this situation. I have seen a few critics, and I agree with what you guys are doing. The critics are saying, look, this puts more power in the hands of the school and it doesn't protect the student athletes. But look, the portal is a situation that every coach has addressed, because their entire team goes into the portal the second it opens.
It's crazy. So what we do in this bill on the portal is we say every athlete has a right to 1 free transfer. You can transfer wherever you want. You can have a second transfer in specific conditions. So if your coach leaves, you can transfer. If your program is canceled, you can transfer. Or if you're a victim of sexual assault or sexual harassment, you can transfer. Other than that, if you transfer a second time, you have to sit out a year. You have to redshirt. It's not good for the system. I mean, you mentioned the end of a season. Let's say you have a small or medium school that does well that season. Their entire team gets picked apart and is gone the next year as the folks with all the money just buy them away. And by the way, that's terrible for the athletes.
Correct.
My focus on this, Becky, really from the beginning, was not the top 1%. It was not the superstars, the Michael Jordans, the Arch Mannings of the world. They'll do great. They're going to make millions of dollars. They're going to be superstars for the rest of their lives. 99% of college athletes will never play in the NFL, will never play in the NBA. And I'm focused on the kid that came from the inner city, didn't have much opportunity, but had a skill, worked hard, got a scholarship, went to school. If that kid goes to, say, 4 different schools in 4 years, he or she is not getting a good education. You're just bouncing around. And if you don't make the NBA or the NFL, you come out without an education and without a future. That's terrible. We need to continue this avenue for kids, not just to go to school, But think about all the skills you learn in sports: teamwork, discipline, sportsmanship, hard work. Those skills prepare those kids for success in life well outside the world of professional
And a massive
sports.
number of business leaders did play in college sports as a result, and it helped them for all those reasons you just cited. How is this act different than the SCORE Act that was withdrawn after the SEC and some other organizations opposed it?
Look, the SCORE Act is very different, and the folks that wrote the SCORE Act, I respect them. They work hard on that. The SCORE Act played out as mostly a partisan bill, mostly a Republican bill, so it had much broader antitrust immunities. It was unequivocal that student athletes are not employees. By the way, I agree with both of those. I would happily vote for the SCORE Act. The problem was the SCORE Act can't pass the Senate. You got to have 60 votes to pass the Senate. I've spent 3 years negotiating this bill, and for the last 3 months, Maria Cantwell and I have been sitting in a room 6 to 8 hours a day just negotiating provision by provision. This right now is co-sponsored by Maria and me, and also by Chris Coons, a Democrat, and Eric Schmidt, a Republican. We've got a hearing in the Commerce Committee tomorrow. And I think this is a bill, look, to get a bipartisan bill in the Senate, you can't go extreme right-wing or extreme left-wing. You got to go for common ground, and we all agree that college sports needs saving. My objective is not for this bill to get just 60 votes. I'd like to get it a lot more. I'd like to see it pass the Senate with a big bipartisan vote. You know, it's striking, in the few days since we announced this bill, we have seen conference after conference, university after university endorsing this bill, saying, yes, please act. This is a time where Congress, we can't even agree on what time of morning it is. I hope we can put that partisan disagreement behind us and solve this problem.
Partisan disagreements, but while you're here from Texas, is it red? I mean, is this?
Oh yeah.
What's happening? Is it Beto 2.0 down there? What?
Yes. Yes.
Beto 2.0. What about the president? That's a rug. There's John Cornyn. After how much Thune spent, I mean, this is a. What's a good word for it? It's before show, but it begins with SA. This is turning in. This is. Literally. What do you think is going to happen now? Is it possible that this guy wins?
It's absolutely possible.
And the other guy, do we want him to win?
Listen, this is a dangerous
Talking
race.
about Paxton, talking about Calorie.
Look, the president makes his own decisions. The primary is over. The primary is over. And Ken Paxton is the Republican nominee. I am all in. I'm supporting Ken Paxton. In fact, I'm hosting a fundraiser for him later this week. And I think it's critical that he win, and I think it's really important for Republicans to take the race seriously in November. The Democrat opponent, James Tallarico, I think is a very, very dangerous candidate. His policy views are far, far left, but this guy is talented, he's charismatic, he sounds like a preacher, and I'm worried that voters who are not paying much attention, who just turn on the TV and see him, they're going to say, oh, what a nice young man. And the Democrats, they hate Ken Paxton. Texas has been their white whale. They're Captain Ahab chasing the state of Texas. They're going to put over $100 million into this election. And so from a Republican perspective, I believe we're going to win because I think Tallarico's values don't line up with the voters of Texas, but it's a real fight.
The Senate Republicans put a lot of money into that race to support Cornyn before.
Well, that is water under the bridge. We're now looking at the
Republicans need to back Paxton.
100%.
Democrats need to back this guy up in Maine, and both parties seem like they're.
But there is
it's all about power.
No, but it's not. This guy up in Maine is a self-described communist. He has a Nazi tattoo that he's had for 18 years on his chest. He's a misogynist who's attacked women and say it's women's fault if they get raped. He's a rapist who's attacked, or not a rapist, but a racist who's attacked African Americans. The recent story is all of these sexually explicit texts that he sent to women, not his wife. He's on a website that has child pornography and sexual predators. This guy is extreme, and the question is, look, for Democrats, is a guy with and not just a Nazi tattoo, by the way, a Totenkopf, which was the symbol of the SS. It is what they wore in the death camps. He chose to tattoo that on his chest. That guy is absolutely extreme, and every Democrat who says something like country over party We now know as they run this report
Do you think Janet Mills could, I think in Maine you're not allowed to, she's not allowed to come back because she's still on the ballot.
She's dropped out of the race. I mean, part of the problem is the Democrat Party has gotten so extreme. Today's Democrat Party is the party of Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and AOC.
Just to go back on that, I'm not going to defend anything with the Democrat in Maine. I agree with everything you just said on that, but let's talk about what Paxton has against him. In 2020, 8 top aides from his office reported him to the FBI, alleging he abused his power to help an Austin real estate investor. After the aides were fired or resigned, they sued Paxton for wrongful termination under the Texas Whistleblower Act. Those allegations ultimately led the Texas House to impeach him in 2023 on charges of bribery and obstruction, although he was acquitted by the Texas Senate. As a resolution, the state had to pay $6.6 million to the whistleblowers.
So look, in the impeachment, he was acquitted, and I would point out, if you want to know how valid those charges were, just ask yourself one question. Was the Biden Department of Justice a lapdog for Republicans? I don't think they were, and it was the Biden DOJ who investigated Paxton and chose not to bring charges. I think that speaks a lot of volumes.
Before we let you go, Iran, the war.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, the president was on the verge of what he thought was a deal, or potentially even, I don't want to say walking away, but walking away, and you were outspoken about that issue with the president. Where do you think things actually stand right now? What are you telling him? What is he telling you?
Listen, I think the president's leadership on Iran has been extraordinary. His decision to...
You were very critical of him just 2 weeks ago, though.
Well, no, I wasn't. I was critical of voices around him, and there's a difference there. I think Donald Trump has been clear-eyed from the very beginning. His decision to launch this military attack is the most consequential decision of his second term, and I think it was exactly the right decision. I talked to President Trump just a few days ago, and what I urged him then, I said, hold the line. Don't take a bad deal.
Right.
Hold the line, no nuclear weapons, zero enrichment, which Trump has said many times, and hand over all your enriched uranium.
Who was around him that you were being critical of then?
Look, there were multiple voices, and everyone's leaking, everyone's calling reporters. And by the way, it's not just voices in the administration. You have the Iranians who are leaking. You have all these people that are pushing disinformation. I did a whole podcast on my podcast, Verdict with Ted Cruz, breaking down all the different pieces that are swirling around. And what I said publicly is taking a bad deal, listening to the voices who are saying, just end it now because we want to be out. I understand the desire to end it now. Look, I'll let them speak for themselves. I'm not in the business of throwing rocks, but what I urge the president is, listen, an Ayatollah who has a nuclear weapon, when the Ayatollah says death to America, I believe him. And the president has made America safer by taking out virtually the entirety of the Iranian military.
Do you think that will hold in the midterms, meaning that the idea of national security, which I think is where you would argue, versus whatever you think the implication is for inflation, for the price of gas, all of the I don't know, the unintended consequences of that?
I don't think national security decisions should be done based on short-term political considerations. I don't think it's going to impact the midterms materially. I've seen no data that suggests that this is having a big impact on the midterms. Let's take gas prices. So under Biden, gas prices nationally were between $5 and $6 a gallon. Trump came in and we cut them basically in half to about $3 a gallon. Now, with the conflict in the Middle East, gas prices have gone up to about $4.50 a gallon. So we've given away about half of the decrease we had. I think that's a temporary.
I just paid more, but okay.
Well, but you choose to live in New York. Come to Texas, and you pay a lot less. I mean, that's a choice. You live in New York and California. It's the knucklehead politicians you have there that tax the hell and regulate the hell out of it. Texas, it's a couple of bucks cheaper. Okay. But here's my point. Anytime there's military conflict in the Middle East, gas prices go up. If this gets resolved and resolved favorably, if we have a government in Iran that are not Islamists chanting death to America, funding terrorists, and trying to kill us, the long-term effect on the price of gas would be to bring it down. And I think the American people want the president to do the right thing for the country. An Ayatollah with a nuclear weapon, there are very few threats on the face of the earth that have a greater prospect of potentially killing hundreds of thousands of Americans than an Ayatollah who had a nuclear weapon, which is why President Trump has been so clear-eyed. Look, the regime in Iran has killed nearly 1,000 Americans. And so the president is acting to keep us safe, and the sort of the pearl-clutching folks, you know, before the conflict in Iran started, the national environment was about D+6. So it is right now, we're about 6 points more Democrat than we were on Election Day 24. Today, we're still about D+6. As far as I can tell, the conflict in the Iran has not moved those numbers at all. I hope Election Day is a much better Election Day. I think there's a very real prospect that Republicans hold both the House and Senate, but we got work to do. We're not going to do that today, but the election's November, not today.
Senator, thank you very much. Before you go, the Sports Act, if you get passage in the Senate as you're anticipating, how quickly do you think it'll make its way through the House and then become signed as law?
I think and hope it will move quickly. We're getting a lot of bipartisan support in the Senate. As I said, we're getting universities and conferences and stakeholders coming in. I spoke with Steve Scalise last week, had a great conversation with him. Steve is a dear friend. The Speaker is a dear friend. And I spoke with the President last night. The President really, really wants to get this done. The first step is to get it through the Commerce Committee. I think we're going to do that. And I'd like to see, my hope is a big bipartisan vote. The bigger the bipartisan vote, the more momentum it will have going into the House.
Speaking of sports, I can't believe you're hoping for the Knicks. That's so weird that you said that when you sat down here. You didn't say that.
By the way, my prediction is Spurs in 6.
Spurs, okay.
And I have a bet with Kirsten Gillibrand on that. So
you do.
If the Knicks win, which is not going to happen, I have offered her Texas barbecue, Shinerbach beer, Bluebell ice cream, and the loser will wear the jersey of the winner. So I'm really looking forward to seeing Kirsten in a Wembanyama jersey.
All day on the Senate floor?
No, just a party for the staff.
Is this a prediction market trade for you, or are you on Kings? What are you doing?
So I don't bet on prediction markets. So thankfully I don't have to worry. But take it to the bank. Spurs in 6. Somebody's going to make money on that.
Senator, thank you very much, Senator Cruz.
got you there.
You're speaking with the Purdue guy.
Welcome back to Squawk Box. Game 1 of the NBA Finals tipping off tomorrow. The Knicks facing the Spurs. And joining us right now is Ted Leonsis. He's the founder, chairman, and CEO Monumental Sports and Entertainment. He's also on the board of governors for the NBA, the WNBA, and the NHL. Are you allowed to call a favorite here on what's going to happen?
No, it's great for the league to have the Knicks back in. And
just given the size of the media market.
Yeah, and there's just this energy and excitement in New York, and it trickles all the way through to all the other teams. And we have another new face of the league in San Antonio. So a lot of excitement. Ratings are really, really strong. Merchandise sales are through the roof. It's a good time.
We had the head of the CFTC here earlier, and we were talking about prediction markets in the sports space. Do you have a take?
Well, you know, I've watched as we went from fantasy sports to sports gaming, sports books in arenas, and this came on very, very quickly. The leagues have a little bit different view, NHL versus NBA. There's going to have to be more regulation. Some of the things that have happened with the insider trading of late, very, very dangerous. Whenever you start to crack on trust, it's bad for the leagues.
What do you think those rules should look like? Because we couldn't get much out of Selig from the CFTC in terms of what he would do, in terms of the authority they might use for that. What strikes you as being bad? What strikes you as something that needs to be corrected?
I think there'll be a federal group here that has to really look at it. I think it's going to move into banking. There's great entrepreneurial companies like Robinhood that are, you know, bringing agentic shopping and tokens and predictive markets, and something bad could happen there. So I do think that.
But just when you say something bad happen, what do you mean?
Well,
what does that look like?
We've seen it with insider trading, because you can bet on anything. You can gamify. And we've always talked about the gamification of everything. Right. And that's basically what's happened. And how do you take in real time to be able to regulate and be able to see? I'm an investor in a company called Sport Radar, and they do integrity services for the league. They connect the leagues and the teams and the casinos and the professional gamblers, and we can see when there's changes in the market, something happens, just like the real SEC, not the football league SEC, and that's going to have to happen.
What do you see?
If there's an anomaly.
But what's the activity look like? Are there more anomalies with the increase of this?
Essentially, we're able to tell the police, the FBI, when we see something untoward happening. And, you know, in the predictive markets, because there's so much gaming, that started to happen in the sports gaming market, where you had all of these small bets. He'll get 3 rebounds, he'll get, 5 shot attempts, can take himself out of the game. So we really, really have to use technology and AI platforms to solve those issues.
Because there's so much more volume, you can't rely on people to be able to catch all of these things.
It's too real time, there's too many events happening.
You talked about agentic shopping and things like that you were mentioning. Do you think that changes sport? Is there some version of AI and agents on people's behalf that changes sports?
We've been giving a lot of thought to that, and I think right now sports has become the antidote for AI. I think people are just craving more of the sense of community, more of the sense of regulation. There is something magical. Senator Cruz touched on it. You come to a game, you know the rules, you know what's out of bounds. The baskets are going to be the same size, and there's respect for the officials. There's respect for the way the league is structured, and so I think fans right now, you see the ratings for both the NHL and the NBA just through the roof. Our attendance is unbelievably
strong. Well, that's where I was going to go next. How concerned are you, and I don't know if it's a concern, it's probably a great thing to some degree, but that sports in an era where events are becomes a full-on luxury good. And it's already been moving towards a luxury good for a long time with the corporate boxes and everything else.
but does it change to such a degree that it truly is a luxury good? And how does that shift the marketplace in this sort of larger context?
I think we're going to be very cognizant of making sure that we have a very big embrace, because we can't price out new fans, students, young kids out of the game. And so, but at the same time, we have to grow the business, and events became really, really important. Now suites and sponsorships, because the local media market changed so dramatically.
By the way, is the thesis wrong, even that if it's a luxury good, it's a problem? Because as I was saying that and thinking about the cost of what a ticket courtside for the Knicks will be, I'm thinking to myself, Taylor Swift might have turned into a luxury good for a period of time when she was doing her tour, no question. But that didn't stop people from downloading her songs and watching the documentary series on Disney and everything else.
I think supply and demand, that's the heart of capitalism, and there's only so many seats in Madison Square Garden. So those ticket prices really are set in an open market. The Knicks have season ticket holders. They bought the tickets at a discount. Now they go up in cost and price with every round. But it's the resellers that are really making a lot of the money, and they're the ones who are pricing at much higher rates.
Yeah, you won't see me there, I don't think.
Golden State a couple of years ago, they did, during their playoff run in the championship, twice as much revenue as a normal NBA team does for the whole season. So the playoffs become really, really important. And it's the ultimate event, the television coverage, and it's great to see as we've moved from, we were on broadcast, then we all went to cable, now we're kind of in this hybrid mode. The Senator was very, very concerned about how we will be bundling and packaging in terms of streaming. But what we at the leagues want and what the teams want is ubiquity. We want to be able to reach everybody.
What do you think about secondary ticket markets? I've actually been surprised that StubHub and things like that haven't done better. They have a huge cost digitally. They spend extraordinary amounts of money on SEO, for example, search engine optimization, so that it shows up to the point where it clearly is like a margin killer.
Yeah, but search right now is, that's undergoing incredible change right now too. Search is not as effective, SEO is not as effective. I think we'll see the YouTubes of the world, the Amazons of the world, and they will try to come up with a bundle. And I've always felt, why not get your streaming and your season ticket and your jersey, your merchandise, and your Uber to take you to the game.
This is like Michael Rubin's dream.
Well, I think we're going to have to define a new bundle. I mean, that's really what's happening. And people are cost conscious as regular fans, but suites are selling for a couple of $1 million a year at our new building. And so we do see this bifurcation of corporations, you said luxury market, but I was a poor kid growing up in Brooklyn, couldn't get any
just to watch
tickets.
That. It could cost more and more just to try and watch what you want to watch, and they, what is a league not supposed to take the highest bid?
I remember when Netflix first started, $10 a month, and the movie ticket was $10 a month, and their position was, for the cost of one movie ticket, you get access to 10,000 tickets. I think that's what we're going to start to see with streaming. For the cost of a single ticket, you get access to 500 games a year, and the playoffs have been available everywhere, on Amazon, on NBC, on Peacock, on ESPN, and that's really, that ubiquity, I think, is most important.
One last big gambling media question, because you know him, Barry Diller trying to buy MGM Resorts. Do you have a thought?
I saw that one coming. Joey Levine.
You said you saw that one coming? You thought he was going to do this?
I think that he looks at gamification. Barry's always been a leader. He's called it People Inc., though. But MGM is an important business. It's a big data company. It's really implementing a lot of AI. I think it has a lot of growth in sports. I'm sure that he'll be looking at lots of ancillary opportunities there. And the hospitality and tourism business is really important.
What else do you see coming that we haven't reported yet?
I think the globalization is going to be very important. We forget, 8-9 billion people on the planet, still only 350 here. And so what the NBA is doing, I think you'll see the NHL and going into Africa where the young people are, still in China, going into Europe. And the digital players, they already have all the customers here. They want us to go to India. They want us to go to Europe. And so I think you'll see these leagues and these teams and these brands becoming really global enterprises.
Ted, I want to thank you for being here.
Great.
Nice
Thanks
to see
for
you.
coming to DC.
Thank you.
Coming up, we were talking about the aforementioned big op-ed that we want to talk tariffs and trade strategy with U.S. Trade Rep Jamison Greer. He's here. He'll be our special guest when Squawk Box returns. And joining us now ahead of his appearance on stage at the CNBC CEO Council Summit, U.S. Trade Representative Jamison Greer. I'm sorry you didn't get to, I wish you would have had an earpiece in. We've been talking about you, maybe your ears were burning, but I read with great interest the op-ed that you wrote about tariffs. It's not just a defense of tariffs, it's almost almost a zealous endorsement of tariffs and sort of correcting a lot of misconceptions that are pervasive currently. Can you just summarize what you said? Because we've used them in the past. Suddenly, it just became almost a factual statement that they're bad, they're taxes, they hurt the consumer, and if you tax something, you get less of it. Why do you think that's not more nuanced?
Well, the article you're talking about, I really addressed two economists because I think fundamentally for many years particularly following the end of the Cold War and this idea that history has ended and now there's this inexorable march to everybody becoming a market-based democracy, which of course is false. We look now, we see where we are. We see some of the largest economies in the world. China, not a democracy, not market-based. India, certainly a democracy, but quite statist in its approach. So all of the underlying assumptions of economists during the past 30 years that efficiency was going to win out in economics and global trade, none of that really came to pass because we live in the real world. And in the real world, countries are operating with power. They're pursuing economic policies for reasons other than economic efficiency, and so they get ahead of us, and we end up becoming, we have to just accept whatever policies they make. So our view is these markets can sometimes be broken. If you have China that goes in and they undermine everybody, they have a lot of subsidies or state direction, it eliminates the possibility of free trade. Therefore, we have to use whatever tools are available to us. Tariffs, as you mentioned, are a tool that have been used for over a century in the U.S. We didn't use it as much in the post-war period, and certainly not in the post-Cold War period. But it's a tool of industrial policy. It's to be used, carefully. But we have seen over the past year very good results. We're exporting more than we've ever exported. We're seeing green shoots in manufacturing, and we're seeing expansion in manufacturing. So all of these things that are happening, it's not just theory. The data are backing up what we're doing.
These are used efficiently and almost surgically. Would you say that's what's been done? Because critics would say it has not been surgical.
Well, it's interesting that you say this because it is simple for people to say, well, they've just been applying tariffs wildly, and that's simply not the case. We have a set of tariffs that are sector-specific: automobiles, steel, aluminum, copper, sensitive supply chains. And if you look at those, they're applied to different countries differently depending on the level of problem we have with those countries. And then we have other types of tariffs. Last year we had what we call reciprocal tariffs that were designed to get at a lack of reciprocity in trade. But even in that situation, we didn't have tariffs on oil and gas, we didn't have tariffs on fertilizer, we didn't have tariffs on food that we can't even grow here, tropical fruits and that kind of thing. So there's been more nuance to it than people realize. Just last night we released a proposal on tariffs on Brazil for a number of unfair trading practices they had. And again, that was something that was quite nuanced. So we're trying to go very carefully to change the terms of trade between the United States and the rest of the world, and also be careful.
But Jameson, to be fair, I think that's a more recent approach to it. When we had Liberation Day last April, those were exactly the complaints we were hearing from grocery store owners and others saying we can't buy bananas anymore because we don't grow them here. And every country that does, we've got these huge tariffs on it. Is it fair to say that it's become more precise as you've gone along?
Well, I never heard they couldn't buy bananas. There was never a banana shortage in the U.S.
That's what Target CEO told us on air.
I never heard anyone having a banana shortage. We never saw any news of that. We did have tariffs on other products for those first 6 months or so. These served as leverage, and when we were able to finally get deals with a lot of these countries that produce those types of products, the Ecuadors of the world, Indonesia, Vietnam, and others, those who make coffee. Well, once we had those deals in place, we were able to jettison those tariffs. Again, we're trying to have tariffs applied to reshore, to protect American production, and where we don't need to have a tariff, you don't need to have it. But our sense is we have a giant trade deficit, we have a lot of offshoring, so we do need substantial tariffs applied in a smart way.
So what's that going to look like over the next couple months? I imagine there's going to be a lot more announcements
to
replace effectively the tariffs that were taken off as a result of the Supreme Court.
Well, so what we're doing now is we have investigations ongoing in my office, Office of the U.S. Trade Representative, and we're investigating specific unfair trading practices by different countries. And we're covering a lot of countries, over 70 countries. And so you will see over the next few weeks, we'll be releasing reports on our findings. And if we find unfair trading practices, structural excess capacity, forced labor, things like this, we'll put out proposals on how we think we should fix it, and that may be proposed tariffs or other things, and everyone will comment, they'll have an opportunity to say their piece. I can't prejudge the outcomes of these, but we do know that there have been persistent unfair trade practices globally.
Had you done that initially, a year ago, instead of Liberation Day, do you think you could have raised anything near the same kind of money and created the same kind of incentives or disincentives that program was aimed at?
So I would say, you talk about money, and money obviously is incidental to tariffs. my sense is anytime you increase tariffs to a certain amount, you're gonna have more money. So that's a factor, but I don't think that's a defining factor of difference. Other things that could have been accomplished, I would say that when the president used his emergency authorities, he was able to move very quickly to get at this issue, get a lot of leverage, impose tariffs, tell everyone the direction of travel, and we were able to do that right off the bat. I mean, the investigations I'm doing right now, they take time, and they take a lot of process appropriately, but they're not the kind of thing where you come in on January 1st, 2025, and you're trying to fix a problem that's been in place for decades. We had to move really quickly. It was an emergency situation for us. It was appropriate.
The war came along, obviously, or conflict, whatever we want to call it.
An excursion is what the
excursion. We don't have a lot of time left, but I made the case that the inflation that we were going to see from tariffs did not come to pass. I mean, we are seeing it now. Would you say that's a fair statement, that the worst case scenario for the tariff inflation never really happened?
No, it didn't happen. I mean, we know that inflation tends to happen when you inject more money into the money supply. That's usually the primary source of inflation. When you do a tariff, it may rearrange supply chains. You see people changing their product choice, but inflation is rarely one-to-one. Okay. So we don't see that as an issue.
Mr. Investor, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Come and see us in New York.
I will.
Make sure you join us tomorrow. We'll be back here in D.C. We will still be here. Squawk on the Street begins right now.
Good Tuesday morning. Welcome to Squawk on the Street. I'm Carl Quintanilla with Jim Cramer, David Faber at Post 9 of the New York Stock Exchange. S&P goes for a 9th consecutive daily gain today, although a little pressured in the pre-market. Google's equity raise getting lots of attention, HPE with a blowout, but consumer stocks still lagging, Shake Shack cutting guidance. Oil's down slightly as the president at least says talks with Iran continue at a rapid pace. Our roadmap begins with Alphabet, though, this ambitious AI push, planning to sell $80 billion in stock, including a $10 billion investment from Berkshire to bolster its AI build-out plans.
Plus, Jensen Huang's trillion-dollar blessing, Marvell Technology is surging in the pre-market because of that. And this is after the NVIDIA said that it could join the ranks of the trillion-dollar club. And why OpenAI? Sam Altman told me he does not think there is a race to go public. This, of course, as OpenAI's rival Anthropic confidentially files for its own initial public offering.
Let's begin with the AI boom. NVIDIA's Jensen Huang making a bullish comment about Marvell while on stage with that company's CEO, Matt Murphy, today at Computex in Taiwan. Take a listen.
What makes it possible is connectivity.
Yeah, we're seeing it, and then
that's why they're going to be the next trillion-dollar company.
We got a little work to do, but we're on our way. We're on our way. Thank you, Jensen.
So it's up 25 pre-market, Jim. They've invested $2 billion now.
Right. Now, Matt's a good friend of our show. He's on any number of times, and he's bought a huge amount of stock in the open market. So this is a man who totally understands the greatness of his company. He inherits the company, buys a business that is optical, okay? It's not a big business. It turns out that he is now also doing work for all the hyperscalers on just all his regular stuff, but he's also going to take over with optical, and that's Jensen's big thing. David, this is a strange conference.
Yeah, Computex is a strange conference. Why?
Because at the same time that we're seeing software rollover, it's rolling over this morning.
Yeah, after an enormous rally recently.
Best 2 days since 2009.
No, I mean, I'm just saying
that crushed a lot of those hedge funds that were short these names.
Absolutely crushed.
Yeah.
We get the amazing presentation with Renee Haas last night that this talks about how every time, Jensen says every time I mention you, every time I do something with you, your stock goes higher. We have a market that is so red hot. And then, David, honestly, your interview with Sam Altman, where I thought he came out like a statesman, which therefore made me feel like, as I told you in an email, that he might be doing a deal. The Alphabet deal, I just don't like the confluence.
There's so many things going on right now. We got to spend a good amount of time on Google. It's so fascinating. That said, before we move on from Marvell, just because we started with it, it's up 18%. Just because Jensen said something?
I don't like that. Look, I've had Matt on. I had Matt on recently, and Matt was defending that his company was under attack by someone, some newsletter said he lost a big contract at Amazon. And he said, look, I didn't, and not only that, look, I'm going to reveal I bought a huge amount of money.
I remember that.
And
But
it was great.
My point is that not to take anything away from
No, but that
Jensen
shouldn't
Huang,
happen is what I'm saying.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. I don't want to...
That's not news. That's just him being nice in the moment.
I remember Matt once he made a presentation and he had Jensen next to him, and he said, "Look, I'm going to be a colleague of Jensen. We're doing a good thing." And that was the days before all this craziness happened. And Matt did not say anything other than the fact we have a lot of work to do, and he's one of the most humble guys in the world. And look, Jensen's humble, but this conference turned out to be they're anointing people. And I sent Matt a text, and I wanted to just remind everyone, you got to be a little more humble right now.
Yeah.
You've got to be humble because these are big moves, and they're not based on anything other than one person saying it.
Right. Now he is one of the most, if not the most important people, but that said, it is not news. But then again, Oracle was up another 10% yesterday. Well, now, I did interview the CEO. It's not clear to me that he said anything that necessarily would move the stock up 10%,
No,
as it
not
was
at
up
all.
10% on Friday.
not
That
at
at
all.
least was on the Dell numbers. As you look at perhaps a bit of a pullback.
Well, how about we take it up on the HPE numbers?
I know. Well, HPE was a huge.
I was out with a group of money managers last night, and everyone just says, "Hey, don't worry about the deals. There's plenty of money."
Plenty of money for SpaceX, plenty of money for Anthropic, and plenty of money for OpenAI.
I mean,
Don't
based
look
on
at
what
me.
you-
I didn't
And
think
now,
so.
and by the way, Google's not coming with 80 billion of its own.
Based on what you wrote this morning, you're beginning to wonder where this money will come from.
Where is it going to come from?
Well,
I'll tell you where it's going to come from. NVIDIA.
I'm wondering about the money overall, guys, after having spent the day at that Stargate data center and just the size and scope, not just of the project, but of everything that's going in it. And I want to spend some time on that. I guess starting off with Google, because I'm sure right away I started getting phone calls, people saying, what in the world? They've never seen anything like this.
Plus Berkshire?
This is one of the most profitable companies the world has ever seen, saying, oh yeah, we're going to hit the equity markets for $80 billion.
I didn't like that.
We're choosing not to hit the debt markets. By the way, we generate, what, $250 billion of EBITDA? But, we have $180 to $190 billion in CapEx expected for 26, but it's going to go higher in 27, so why not? Why not issue another $80 billion? Because they are experiencing what they say strong demand for its AI solutions and services from enterprises and consumers at levels that are exceeding the company's available supply. But Jim, we've been doing this, all of us, a long time. This is a $4.5 trillion company saying, all right, we're going to issue. I mean, by the way, is a percentage that's very small. Chose not to go to the debt markets.
And they've got...
So they've already drenched the debt markets.
They have.
Right.
In
Chose
Japan.
not to monetize some of Waymo.
Yeah. 126 billion in cash at the end of Q1.
But and they talk about it as balance sheet, optimization.
And they've got some bills to pay. And then they're doing an ATM. The last ATM that I've seen was AMC.
Yeah, they're going to do
I will right now put AMC in the same sentence as Alphabet. Well, it's like it comes before Alphabet than AMC, right? It's AL and then
right. It's the $10 billion of Berkshire where they did that, and the price was $351.81. So Berkshire got
Greg's on board.
Greg's on board. Greg Abel.
Everyone told me Buffett's on board. Have you seen that there's a transference?
To Jim's point,
It's like
$40 billion
See's candies.
of at the market, and then the additional $30 billion in a public offering that will sold.
And by the way, we're talking about like Ashkenazi's there, and then she's the CFO. We had like Ruth Porat.
Did they ever sell any stocks?
Well, actually, we built a chart of equity raises in Alphabet's history. I think, do we have it? I mean, this is a function of prior equity raises. There it is.
Oh, there it is. They did raise a little equity, and what was that? When is that?
What was that there? You sure that's it? Or something there? That may be just a blue speck.
Yeah,
Could
they
you erase
raised a little
that?
equity in 04 and 05. Okay.
But David, okay, so let's step back from our facetious discussion and just say,
Yes.
look, we have to recognize that there are a lot of companies raising cash. That's typically not a great time to buy stock. We have one man, Jensen Huang, whom I think is the greatest. He hasn't made fun of me in the last few days about that. Stock hasn't taken out its high yet. I would feel a lot better. We have anointing of people who, frankly, are terrific, but I don't necessarily expect that a $1 trillion company for Matt. I've known Matt since he took over the job, and we were struggling with a $50 billion company.
Well, and to David's coverage yesterday, we now have some fresh Census Bureau data that we're spending more on the AI infrastructure build out than we are on office construction, more than we're spending on public transit infrastructure.
But then again, Jensen said it was going to be the fourth industrial revolution. We had to do it, and this was like, remember all the. We built the railroads, okay, but the railroads ran out of money. This is not going to happen. David, is it Star City or Stargate?
It's Stargate.
Star City?
I don't think we're going to run out of money.
He doesn't even know what Star City is. The Apple show about the Russians beating us to the moon?
Oh, no. Really? I mean, you're that deep into the Apple catalog?
I am so deep because I want Apple to take out 320.
When do you have
As a matter of
time
fact,
to go that deep in the Apple catalog? I'm watching an Apple show. I just finished a couple.
Which one?
The one with
your friends and neighbors.
No, the widow one. Widow's bed.
No, don't tell me how good. Don't spoil me.
It's
Don't
good.
spoil me.
Enjoy it.
All right.
Listen.
I want John Turnus. Is John Turnus?
I want to get to this.
The next $5 trillion man.
I want to get back to the money. The money. Because yesterday, I was at a site in which $16 billion is being spent to build it. Right, that is the Stargate in Saline Township in Michigan. We took a lot of shots of it, as you know. 3 different buildings, 550,000 square feet. Another core operations center, 100-something thousand square feet. I mean, this thing is massive. But it just starts there at the $16 billion. Then you've got to actually put all the GPUs in it. And as Clay made clear to me, that's another CEO of Oracle, which of course is going to be the tenant, and then they're going to be selling the compute that they built there to OpenAI.
Are you saying we'll be in videos?
Yes,
Like
I'm saying
CPUs.
it's $45 billion to $50 billion on one project. Granted, 1.4 gigawatts, basically the capacity of one nuclear power plant. It will consume in electricity. But that said, it's just one of many. And it does get to this larger question, perhaps answered by Google, when they decide to sell $80 billion worth of stock to help finance an even larger CapEx spend into next year. But it does get to this question about return, and it's certainly one that I put to Sam Altman yesterday and discussed with Clay McGurk and the financiers behind it, including at Bank of America, the co-president, Jim DeMar. Take a listen. When you talk about something like this, $45 billion, maybe $50 billion, OpenAI being the main customer, do you feel like that $50 billion will generate the necessary return for both OpenAI and for all the people financing this deal?
At this point, we're very confident. We have, so 1 gigawatt is a huge amount of compute, but we understand what demand looks like and how much people want to use these models and the degree to which revenue is ramping at our company in the industry. And more than that, the degree that value is now ramping. It's not just, oh, let me try this, but people are really saying, the future of my company, the future of my scientific research program, it is going to depend on this. Can you promise me compute long into the future?
Anyone who sits here and tells you they're doing 5 of the largest construction projects ever invented, what does it mean to be on track? What I can say is that based on all of our expectations, both in terms of the construction process, the permitting process, power generation, GPU delivery, all of it's actually going on schedule or ahead of where we expected it to. And you see that in terms of what we're delivering to our customers and also the commitments that we're making to our investors and our partners.
I think the good news is, for the most part, the borrowers or the those backing the projects are low in debt in terms of leverage ratios in general, so that's a positive. I think everybody's trying to, the utopian or dystopian view about AI. What does it mean? Is the CapEx too much? I think the positive that we have going for us in the marketplace today is that there are a lot of constraints. So even though you hear, $1 trillion plus numbers per year being talked about, I think the biggest binding constraint is going to be labor and equipment, whether it's turbines
and power, right?
Power, switchgear. You can go down the list. So I think the market's it's actually much more supply constrained today than it is, demand constrained.
So it's not going to be capital constrained.
I think just because we've been able to access different parts of the market, so whether it's the loan market, the asset-backed market, or securitized market, plus the corporate bond market, really gives us a lot of opportunity in areas to tap differently.
But Jim, there's an awful lot of players in the capital being provided for this revolution we're in the midst of?
Well, that's why it's like the rails. I mean, everybody's in.
Everybody's in.
Everyone in the rails. Anyone who had any money at the time went in, thought that they could be triumphant. No one was. In the end, no one was really triumphant. They had to redo everything, and many sort of, let's say, not necessarily bankruptcies.
Might be a good time to read a good history of the rails. So put that,
read anything about Jay Gould. Read about Jay Gould.
Okay. Give us some of your good book recommendations, because I need one. Yeah.
Read about Jay Gould. Jay Gould was in the middle of it, and just everybody's watering down everything and getting a lot of different investors involved, and getting this guy involved, and getting that guy involved, and they needed the capacity. If without the capacity, they wouldn't win. Huh. Oh, that's the data centers. It's kind of data center look. I loved David's yesterday, because what it showed me is the level of confidence these guys have is so great that I just came back and said, I'm really worried here.
Yeah, well, Altman told David that there's not necessarily a race to go public, but does the equity raise suggest that there is a race of some kind going on?
Oh, there's a race big time. Why would you ever say that there's not a race? I mean, it's not a public company.
It's not a public company. He seems fairly sanguine about their. Obviously, they will come public.
He was
what
great.
Said.
He was great.
But that said, I
was not erratic.
I did not push him on that particular.
But you didn't have to. He was not erratic.
Subject of the race and whether why they don't need to be first.
He was a gentleman. He wasn't caustic.
No,
he looked at you. He talked to you.
He's not. Yeah, it was fun. I was happy to have the opportunity to speak to Sam. We'll play more of the interview as well for those who may have missed it yesterday.
But in the end,
it is, Jim, it's just the numbers are staggering. The larger question will continue to be all that money being spent, and I saw it now. Will it generate the return for Related Digital and Blackstone, for example, in this particular as the equity there? The PIMCO bond holders that are putting PIMCO that is putting $10 billion in to finance the 16 billion part of the 16 billion, and then for Oracle that's going that OpenAI is on the line to pay. OpenAI is going to have to in some way maybe change. Is it going to have to become outcomes based? It's not going to just be from paying $21 a month.
That's the big one. But
the enterprise.
Well, Carl, I'll come back to it's Jensen. Okay, and he said the more you spend, the more you make, and that's what keeps me in. The more you spend, the more you make, and Jensen keeps me in because he's been true to us the whole time.
That's not limitless.
No, it's not.
That maxim has limits eventually.
You have breaking news.
We do. We're getting some personnel news out of the White House and the president. Let's get to Eamon Javers in D.C. Morning, Eamon.
Yeah, good morning to you, Carl. This is dramatic and I think you can say unexpected news from the President of the United States this morning, who announces on social media that he is going to place Bill Pulte, the head of Freddie and Fannie, as the acting director of national intelligence. This post just crossing over the past few moments. He says, I am appointing the director of Federal Housing and Finance Agency and chairman of Fannie Mae Freddie Mac, William J. Pulte, to serve as acting director of national intelligence. William has deep experience managing the most sensitive matters in America, the safety and soundness of the markets, and over $10 trillion at Fannie Mae Freddie Mac, a substantial increase from where it was just 12 months ago. During this period, he will remain director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency and chairman of Fannie Mae Freddie Mac. Congratulations to Director Pulte. So, guys, this is sort of unprecedented to have a director of national intelligence now, at least in an acting capacity, who is also the head of Fannie Mae, who is also the head of Freddie Mac, and who is also the director of the FHFA. That's a lot of hats for any one individual to wear. And of course, national intelligence directors generally have not been recruited out of the housing sector. So this is something that we really haven't seen before. But Bill Pulte is well known to President Trump as a real loyalist, somebody who is willing to take on the aggressive fights politically that the president wants, including the fight against Jerome Powell. You remember that Pulte was one of the leading voices in pushing that investigation into the construction of the new Fed headquarters. He is one of the leading antagonists of Jay Powell among the president's administration, and somebody that the president has come to rely on for investigations like that to produce results that he wants politically. So one of the big questions over this is, what does it mean for U.S. intelligence and the independence of U.S. intelligence, given that you have somebody who's so closely politically aligned now with the President of the United States running U.S. intelligence, obviously replacing Tulsi Gabbard, who stepped down recently because of an illness involving her husband. Now you have somebody who's got multiple hats, running multiple enormous fiefdoms, and also running U.S. intelligence guys. Back over to you.
Yay! Some argue you could draw a line from the acting AG, the president's personal lawyer, who now runs justice, and maybe this is a piece of that. Meantime, Eamon, the Times this morning picks up on your interview from yesterday, in which the president told you that negotiations with Iran are, quote, very boring.
That's right. I called the president yesterday about 12:15.
Very boring.
We had this report early in the day that the Iranians were breaking off negotiations with the United States, and that sent the price of oil skyrocketing. We needed to confirm whether that was true or not. The president said, he told me,
You didn't know it was confirmed?
That they were breaking off negotiations, but if
what the hell's wrong with you people?
He said it ultimately didn't matter to him. He thought the negotiations had gone on too long. The Iranians, he said, were tapping us along, that is stringing the U.S. along. And he said that the negotiations he found to be very boring. Later in the day, after my interview with him, the president posted on social media that the negotiations are ongoing. Now, I have not seen any confirmation of that from the Iranian side, so it takes two to negotiate, so we'll see what we get throughout the day today in terms of confirmation. Obviously, oil markets hanging on that, stock market hanging on that. There's a lot on the line with those negotiations globally, so we'll see where they say. It's a murky picture right now, and we'll see if we can get any more clarity on it.
Eamon, thanks. Eamon Jammers in D.C.
Maybe we need a good housing guy in intelligence. I hadn't thought of it.
Wait, what?
Maybe we need a good guy, a housing guy in intelligence.
You mean the same guy?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's original.
We'll see. We'll talk some housing. Downgrade to Sherwin-Williams today. We'll get to more of David's interview with Sam Altman. We'll get you some retail action. Dollar General, Victoria's Secret's up 35 pre-market. Take a look at the futures. We're back in just a moment.
So boring.
let's get a mad dash from Jim. We've got 7 minutes before we ring the opening bell here at the New York Stock Exchange. You want to talk a little into it? We were talking about software stocks surging.
A lot of
not
people
much
feel-
there,
a lot of
but
people
surging.
feel- right, but this piece may have triggered the end of the short squeeze / love with software. This is Goldman taking Intuit from a hold to a sell. Now I had Intuit on not that long ago. I didn't think it was that bad. Maybe a little late there with the down 50.
A little late, man. Now they go to a sell.
A lot of problems with MailChimp. Okay.
Yeah,
They could
great.
use it.
Great call,
They could
Goldman.
use it.
Thanks so much for that.
It was a
All right.
housing guy that took that down. The housing. I like the whole thesis. I mean, I like that.
All
They
right.
should get the guy from Lennar, Stuart Miller.
Just move
They-
everybody
their
around.
Defense Department.
Why not?
He's a smart guy, that fella. Okay, so here's the problem with this. Fundamentals make it worse before they get better. This is one of those that AI is going to disintermediate. And the problem with this, David, is that we had ServiceNow who's going higher. We had Salesforce going higher. We had Workday going higher. We felt that maybe this apocalypse is over. But now I think we're going to see that it was a bit of a short squeeze.
Well, listen, you know, the numbers from Datadog and Snowflake were very, very good.
Yes,
but
they
as we've
were.
made the point, they are enabling AI in a way that these others are not.
No.
Well, are competing with it or seem to be competing
You're
with
right.
it.
Look at this. This is
And so
amazing.
in the basket of the software names, some are doing well.
Well, some are partial, and then Snowflake switched to be an AI company that is being helped by non-AI. The other guys are still, they're straddling. And the straddlers have been going up, and today is the end of the straddle rally.
Okay. You're calling the end of the straddle
I'm
rally.
calling the end of the straddle rally.
All right, that's a big call.
All right.
Yeah, I like it. I like it.
I'm here.
You have any background in national security at all?
I read a lot of books.
What time is it?
Yeah.
We
Well,
have
I
5
have a job
minutes.
for you. We'll see.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So I think trying to think here. What kind of day are we going to have? I'm excited for some reason. Better make sure remind me later. I gotta restart my computer. Not now. We hit my low support on the SPY. Takes a second. Well, well. Less than a minute. It's like 758's on the SPY. We could get to a double top, pre-market high, because you got like two head and shoulders. You got one right here that goes up to a double top. Whoops. Okay. It's on the 2 minute. Looks just as good on the 1 minute. I mean, that 2 minutes, okay, yeah. And always cleanest, Jim.
Good morning. My name is Erica. I'm just checking.
Erica. Woo! MSTR's pulled back pretty hard right here. It snow's down 14%. Snow. I'm looking with its acting. Got the VWAP right now as support. And IWM. Woo, man. AMD. Oh. Tweezer tops. See a lot of tweezer tops. And then Meta. Oh, got an alert. Spy. We're at the VWAP on the SPY radio. Looks like a do or die. VWAP the 263. $758. We're at the 200 right now. Broke below the VWAP. And we're at the 63. Are these things frozen or what? think it's frozen. Hmm. Oh yeah. I'm not going to trade platform acting like this. Hmm. Well, that ain't right. Hmm. Can't get.
Structure is one of these examples, and Vistra fits right in the middle of that. If you think about what does the world need, what does the U.S. need, what does AI need? It needs electricity, right? It needs more electricity. Vistra can provide that. Its assets are located in a region, in regions where electricity demand is rising at a much higher rate than what it's historically risen, and so we see Vistra being situated as one of the largest producers of electricity in the state of Texas, and we see ERCOT in the state of Texas as being a big driver of AI demand going forward.
All right, Rob Thamel, thank you. Senior Portfolio Manager, Tortoise Capital. Coming up next, we'll take a look at some of the key levels to watch on the charts. Kevin Green is standing by. Opening bell, we'll be right back.
Sometimes, you know, you could have done better. Same goes for where you invest. Level up and invest smarter with Schwab.
I'm Jenny Horn. We go beyond the headlines, tracking the trends, sector moves, and fundamentals shaping the markets in real time. This is Schwab Network. Subscribe at schwabnetwork.com. Have you ever watched an interview and thought, I wish they had 5 more minutes, or I want to know how they discovered that hidden gem? That's exactly where Market Matters comes in. I'm Marley Caden, and our podcast is slowing things down. We're going beyond the earnings to get to the heart of the people and companies driving the global economy. If you want the full story, not just the headlines, Market Matters is for you. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to Opening Bell. I want to take a look at some of the key levels to watch after 9 weeks of gains and record-setting day yesterday for the S&P. Let's talk to Senior Markets Correspondent Kevin Green, taking a look at some of the levels to watch right now. Good morning, Kevin.
Good morning, Nicole. We are actually seeing, let's say, half and half when it comes to the sectors advancing minus the declining sectors for the S&P 500, but it's more on the maybe a little bit of the rebound trade from maybe some weakness that we've seen over the last couple of trading sessions with utilities, industrials, and then energy kind of moving to the upside here today, and seeing consumer discretionary as well as communication services because of Alphabet, Google, pulling back to the downside here. But if you're looking at the levels, 7,600, once again, this is the 3rd day in a row, which is going to be a key area of support for this market. We're trading slightly below it right now, down about 7 points from that 7,600 level, but let's see if some buyers really try to step in, and if they are going to do so, 76.30 to the upside is a major area of resistance that I'm focusing on.
I agree with you, buddy.
To the downside, 75.50. Nicole, we have a 16 VIX right now. We're implying about a 1% move to the upside or downside, but you are seeing a little bit more put positioning happening over the last couple of trading sessions as well. So volatility is relatively cheap. We are trading near all-time highs. It does look like we have some institutions maybe preparing for some hedging activity here in the event that we do have a pullback.
Understood. How about copper? Where do we stand there, and what are you watching there?
Yeah, it is trying to break out once again. If we're looking at a 3-year weekly chart, we are seeing copper trading near the highs right now. We are only about 30 cents away from the highs, and you are seeing this higher high, higher low scenario taking place here. Now, this has actually saw some relative strength over the last couple of weeks Even though the market's concerned about inflation, we have seen the fact that supply chains, especially when it comes to sulfuric acid, which is needed for copper mining, is in short supply at this point in time, pushing prices higher. And there's some pockets within the China economy that is showing some strength when it comes to mining operations here. So one to keep on your radar, because we are in a higher inflationary environment, higher interest rate environment. This is a key input for a lot of homes that are being built out, as well as data centers. So this one is trying to make new highs and kind of bucking the trend when it comes to the economic growth story that everybody else has been kind of looking at and trying to fade some of these physical metals.
All right, thank you for that. Great to see you, Kevin Green. Our market meetup panel is ready. Joining me right now, Alex Coffey and Dan Grant, Senior Specialist, Retail Trading, Charles Schwab. Alex, good morning to you. We'll start with you. What stands out to you in this morning's early trade?
Yeah, I mean, the more they change, the more they stay the same, I guess, Nicole. The story of the last couple months has been the equity dispersion story. It continues to be the primary story in my mind. You look at the S&P 500 right now, about 47% of stocks are higher. But you look at the mixture, so much of this market has been a momentum-led market. You have the momentum factor up about 80 basis points today. Memory continues to be strong. It's up 70 basis points. Semiconductors broadly up 2.6%. But you look at Mag 7 with some of the Alphabet news under pressure today, down about 0.8%, and software down 3% today. All in all, what you have is a market that is not reflective of what's happening at the index level. It looks like a quiet day, but you look at some of these moves. Google down 4%, CrowdStrike down 2%, Broadcom up 5%. The movement under the surface is far greater than what you see on the SPX or the NDX.
And Dan, what are some of your thoughts this morning? I know JOLTS on your mind and the bond market.
Yeah,
let's start with the JOLTS story.
Yeah, so I got JOLTS on tap here for late, about 10 minutes from now. Looking for any kind of insight into some weakness in the labor market. We have the beige book for tomorrow, and that is the previous one. The market was very focused on the business activity and. Going forward, we're going to be looking for insights into higher input costs and how that will reflect in the labor market. Also, we have unemployment Friday. Very important to keep an eye on that. Expected up 85,000 there. We're looking for a surprise. Another thing that that they brought up, some of the Schwab analysts brought up, is the tightness in corporate spreads, and that's the higher rate for corporates over treasuries is a very tight. So that's got a good news and bad news. Good news, you've got strong companies and good balance sheets. Bad news is that the corporate bonds are less attractive. But we're sitting right under 5% for the bond and right under 4.5% for the 10-year note.
Understood. So those were some good economic prints to look for as well. Thank you for the news on the corporate spreads. I think about some of the more the earnings that are due. Also, some of the stock upgrades we saw for Meta and HPE. Downgrades included Intuit, just to name one or two, and more earnings to come. Alex, when you look at the semiconductor bounce back, and I think that yesterday how we saw a lot of that and a lot of inflows in NVIDIA, and even a name like today with HPE up 24%. Tech still really shining.
Yeah, it is, and it's a big part of the market story, and it continues to be. You look at a name like Marvell up tremendously, just simply because the kingmaker himself, Jensen Huang, essentially said that he sees that being the next company to cross that $1 trillion valuation. Market eating that up today. You look at Micron, so much of the market has seemed to be, following the swings day to day. In Micron, it was down earlier. You had a NASDAQ lower. It's up now. You have NASDAQ up now. Seagate, Western Digital both got price target adjustments to the upside from Citi. So you look at it, there's just a lot of optimism right now in semis, Nicole.
We're also watching what the Fed may or may not do next, right? And we did talk about Beth Hammack, who she's president and CEO of the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland. She had some concerns about inflation and even said hikes may soon be appropriate. She also had concerns about the lower income shoppers and whether, you know, they're obviously looking for value. A tough place for the Fed members to all be and have to make decisions. Some of your thoughts on the Fed outlook or what you're hearing, Dan?
Yeah, the biggest concern I would be right now is if they do start raising rates and they don't address their balance sheet, right? The Warsh came in here and saying, okay, we're going to reduce the Fed balance sheet. We're going to cut rates. Well, probably not going to be able to cut rates, and then the balance sheet they're subject to the market. If you start winding down that balance sheet, the Fed's balance sheet, you could have a really big problem in funding markets and spreads blow out. Hasn't happened yet though.
Yeah, so I mean, we'll have to wait and see. I mean, she said the hikes may be needed if inflation doesn't abate. It's steady rate policy for now seems reasonable, and the high inflation is her main concern. So we'll continue to follow her comments, of course. And a final thought from you, Alex, please.
Yeah, just I'm not sure how higher rates are going to get more oil out of the ground. So sometimes the tools is like trying to stick a square peg into a round hole. So I want to see some real solutions. I don't necessarily want to just use these tools that they have. I'm with Dan, you know, lower rates, reduce the balance sheet might be a good tandem, but for now, the Fed doesn't have the answers. So the more they talk and the less they do is probably the better for the economy.
And look, the next Fed meeting is June 16, 17 for the Federal Open Market Committee, where they're likely to leave rates unchanged. But it is certainly the first meeting where the committee gets together under new Fed Chair Kevin Warsh. So we'll follow that story as well as we get headlines from that. Alex Coffey, Dan Brandt, thank you both. And thank you, friends, for being with us here on Schwab Network Opening Bell. I'm Nicole Petalides, every day at 9 a.m. and 2 p.m. See you at 2 o'clock for the watch list. Please join me then. In the meantime, Morning Trade Live with Sam Bottas is next.
Checking, the checking account built for investors, named highest in client satisfaction by J.D. Power for 7 years in a row. With Investor Checking, you get the award-winning features of our checking account, plus cash management solutions, all designed for investors like you, with unlimited ATM fee rebates for cash withdrawals worldwide, no overdraft fees, and enhanced security features to keep your money safe. Also, because your investor checking account is linked to your Schwab One brokerage account, you can manage your checking and investing in one convenient location. Moving funds between your accounts is easy. Cash moved to your brokerage account is available in seconds. That means you can stop waiting and start investing in stocks, bonds, money market funds, and more. Get more with Schwab Bank Investor Checking, the checking account built for investors.
Schwab Coaching is concepts brought to life in the real world.
Schwab Coaching is learning constantly.
It's relatable, it's practical,
clear, understandable,
and hopefully entertaining.
Take it for what it's worth, but I think it's absolutely world class.
Schwab Coaching is actionable, individualized, community, growth, and empowering.
It's really a human touch with your investing.
We have coaches who have been in the industry and around the industry for a long time.
So the nice thing about Schwab Coaching is that clients get access to 9 different sets of expertise.
We want to engage with you in chat on the shows we host. We want to engage with you outside of the classes we host.
A consolidation that could add to this trade. So we shall see.
We have different formats because people learn differently at different times.
If somebody's a real bookworm, we've got courses for you to learn from. They can dig in, go at their own pace.
We have webcasts running through YouTube all day, every trading day.
Ongoing 24, 25 times a year events that are making their way around the country.
So you get that opportunity to share experiences and knowledge with other traders.
They're kind of helping each other learn.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out my account here to see if just blank.
A 30-some hours worth of it each and every week. How incredible is that? And it's free.
live insights, actionable data, and market-moving analysis. Schwab Network connects the headlines to the why in real time. Watch free 24/7 at schwabnetwork.com.
Welcome to Morning Trade Live. I'm Sam Bartis, live from the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. We've got plenty to hit on both here and abroad over the next hour. Here's a look at what is coming up. We will dive into the drivers behind the recent market momentum as stocks continue to trade near all-time highs despite so much macro uncertainty. And over the next hour, we'll have example trades for HP Enterprise and Palo Alto Networks. HPE opened at a new all-time high after that blockbuster earnings, and Palo Alto is reporting this afternoon after the closing bell. So we'll break down all of that. But let's take a look at where markets are trading half an hour into the session here. We're looking at a bit of a mixed picture. Chips are back in rally mode here. We've got a bit of a split picture across our Mag 7 cohort right now. The S&P 500 just pulling back fractionally, as we can see here on the line to the downside, but still near these all-time highs. An 8th day of gains yesterday. So let's see if things can pick up throughout the course of the session, but a pretty flat performance as we get underway here. The NASDAQ 100 just marginally higher as we speak. The Dow Jones being weighed down a little bit, but the Russell 2000 is making up for some of that lost ground we saw yesterday. Up 0.4% right now, as it looks like yields are coming off across the curve right now. Let's take a look at where foreign markets are trading right now. Europe is currently still in action, and we're looking at a positive picture there. We had some Eurozone inflation. I'll break down that later on in the program, but the FTSE 100 just up fractionally. The DAX is up almost 0.5%. And a mixed picture out in Asia overnight. The Nikkei 225 taking a breather for some of those records that we've seen. It was another record for the Kospi before retreating, and the Hang Seng Index ripping last night, 2.5%. We'll explain why later in the show. Let's take a look at some of these futures products as well, because all eyes on oil is just picking up a little bit right now. We're at $92 a barrel. Obviously, a lot of conflicting headlines, which we continue to grapple with. Ben Emmons saying the presidential jawboning must continue a bit longer because the Iran deal, while not perfect, must be signed. Critical next 7 days, he says. We've got the US dollar index right now holding steady at 99.13. We're obviously going to be getting these JOLTS numbers, which could be a catalyst in a moment. The 10-year yield just coming off, as I mentioned, 447 right now, still elevated. And Bitcoin has now gone sub 70,000. We're at 68,000 and change. Of course, we were talking about how strategy sold for the second time ever yesterday. Gold, though, catching a bid, as we can see here. So let's get out to Kevin Green, who joins me now, just for a look at some of this data. We're starting to get the numbers for the jobs numbers. JOLTS right now hitting the tape. Just walk us through what we're seeing there, KG.
Well, Sam, good morning. We are actually seeing yields moving a little bit higher here and a little bit of volatility within the markets after this JOLTS data actually came out a lot better than the street's expectations. For the month of April, JOLTS came in at 7.618 million. Street was looking for 6.86 million, and that's better than what we saw for last month, which was also revised higher to 6.68 million here. So what does that mean? The amount of job openings are obviously increasing. That's what that number is reflecting. That also then suggests that the labor market is not weakening at this point in time. It's actually strengthening. Now, this is a very volatile data set in some respects, and it has yet to really be normalized since the COVID-19 pandemic. But if we are seeing the amount of jobs increasing, then it also then leads credence to the fact that the Fed is not really going to be able to leverage that labor market weakness as a key lever, if you will, to try to cut rates anytime soon. This is why we are seeing the 10-year, 20 and 30s moving a little bit higher when you're looking at rates. And for the most part, markets are kind of gyrating on this particular news. But we'll see how the market actually takes this 4.5% on the 10-year Treasury. We have seen us hit that level, and usually that's
like it wants to break out here
in the market here. But a really good report when it comes to JOLTS. Let's see if it's followed up by the BLS data set on Friday to reflect that the labor market is still holding up and is intact. And in fact, we may even see, if this trend kind of continues, the unemployment rate actually moving a little bit lower.
Yeah, I mean, it really kicks off a week jam-packed of jobs data, but as you say, it really has been seen as holding pretty steady and at least giving the Fed a little bit more headroom to focus on the other side of the dual mandate, which is the risk coming from inflation. Obviously, Beth Hammack out this morning talking about the Fed might have to take action sooner rather than later. Inflation does not slow down, and the economy is actually facing a wider range of pressure that is pushing inflation higher, in fact factors beyond just the Iran war, it seems, and we've seen that in the data. So let's wait and see, but for now it looks like, as you say, things are stabilizing as far as the job openings increasing. Let's switch gears to what we're seeing as far as some of these stock moves. I mean, Marvell obviously rallying hard on Jensen Huang's bullish comments over at Computex. Just walk us through that and the price action we're seeing.
Yeah, we are seeing the shares up about 23%. This is after Jensen Huang stated that the company could be the next trillion-dollar semiconductor player in the space. Now, Marvell obviously has semiconductor exposure, but also has the networking component as well, which is obviously going to be critical when it comes to building out these data centers. And as you have seen over the last week or so, the earnings announcements coming from a Snowflake or an HPE for that matter, it's really kind of reflecting that the networking demand, cloud and server demand, is ramping up to the upside, and Marvell could be a beneficiary of that. So an interesting time that we have right now, where you can have a comment come from Jensen Huang and it increases your market cap by 23% in one trading session. But we do have a very strong gap to the upside, and if you are a trader, you'd like to see the stock holding above the 265 level at the close for today to give you some of this confidence that maybe it can continue, and you start looking at 285 to 290 as your next major area of resistance.
Okay, we're seeing Nvidia high today to the tune of 2.5%. It helping other chip names as well. Obviously, a lot of stories within the semiconductor space this morning as well. I mean, you've got the stocks up 4.5%. As we speak, we're seeing memory, a nice day once again here. ASML's higher, AMD, Broadcom. I mean, what do you make of what we've heard here as far as, you know, giving even more ammo to this trade, which just shows no signs of slowing down right now?
Well, I think you are seeing a little bit of a rotation coming out of the defensive sectors, and then money being put to work for some of these names like a Marvell or an HPE for that matter. It doesn't really take much to really move a lot of these stocks, comparing their float to, let's say, an Nvidia or a Google Alphabet. And so I think the market is obviously chasing the trend, and the trend right now is some software, some AI when it comes to networking infrastructure, and that has been the trade that's been working. And until that actually breaks, I think the market overall, the S&P 500, can continue to make higher highs and higher lows just because of the market cap weighting of some of those industries in general here. So the theme is still holding up. It's definitely kind of counteracting some of the concern that you have from a geopolitical risk standpoint. And until you see this narrative changing and you see a significant amount of drawdown on the institutional holding front for a lot of these names, I think right now you got to kind of play this trend. And the trend is saying that networking and AI continues to be relatively strong for this market.
Yeah, for sure. And it looks like as far as the hardware versus software spread, the chips are winning on the day today, while we did see that rally yesterday amongst the two. Actually, the IGV losing about 3.5% this morning. You're seeing a lot of those software names actually down, given the run-up we've seen in recent weeks, a 7-week rally there. What about commodities? What are you seeing there? I mean, why metals rallying this morning? You know, obviously, given the stronger data print we've got, particularly silver. I know you're looking at a chart there.
Yeah, from a silver standpoint, this is going to be your inflationary gauge or the economic growth story for the overall world, if you will. So you are seeing a little bit of a move to the upside, up about 1.3%. Technically speaking, silver is actually in a very interesting technical setup. We had this, obviously, this run that we saw early on this year. We had this blow off top, and we have been consolidating around the $65 to $75-ish area. Some buyers have stepped in, but we have been making higher highs since the March lows. We kind of have this channel forming. Now, unfortunately, because of that breakdown, this is more of a bear flag, bearish type of trading activity over the last 6-7 months or so, and we have kind of a bullish channel. But if it's able to break above this $85 to $86 level, that